Chapter 236. You're not humiliating us, you're humiliating all the racers you killed last night. Chen Guang didn't think that much. There were many reasons why he could drive the magically modified Alto steadily at 400 km per hour in the racing god's training ground. First, it was the bug in the strengthening parameters. Second, it was because he had died so many times that he knew the route like the back of his hand. He had to remember it. If he didn't, he would die in minutes. The reason why he stopped at every corner was that he had to remember the characteristics of all the corners. From the angle of the turn, to the change in the inclination of the road, to the difference in the width of the yellow line on both sides of the road, he had to memorize all of it. It seemed that no one could pose a threat to him now. God knew what would happen when he entered the battle to protect the car. So, the racing god, Chen Guang, got serious. Regardless of how Lu Fei ridiculed him, Chen Guang did not speak a single word from the start to the end. Every single time he stopped at a bend, he would only turn his head and squint his eyes like a scanner, taking in the entire situation at the bend. Gradually, Lu Fei stopped talking. Chen Guang was serious. Although she couldn't see his face through the mask, his eyes were so handsome. Finally, when it was 7:30, both the racers and the fans arrived one after another. There seemed to be more people than yesterday. At least, there were about 3,000 more people in the parking lot of the starting point. Apart from these ordinary fans, there was another group of people who stood out. Even though there were only a dozen people in casual clothes, both the fans and the racers couldn't help but look in that direction. No one would have thought that on the second day of the race, there would be a new king. And there were two of them. The king of Thailand, Wupan Juniao, 21 years old. 5 years ago, at the age of 16, he had become famous in the Paris race. So far, he was the youngest king in history. He was called the Dark Knight Demon. He had mastered the strange drifting and cornering technique. He often overtook his opponents when they weren't paying attention. Back in the Paris auto racing competition, it was only when he won the final victory and was about to take away 7 luxury cars that people suddenly realized that this slender man who was as beautiful as a woman was already the king of cars of the day. The second was the king of Japan, Ryoichi Takahashi. He was the absolute overlord of the Tokyo auto racing competition 6 years ago. Nicknamed the Burning God of War, he was the world's best racer at driving a GTR. His master once drove the first-generation GT RR32 to slaughter his peers in the formal European arena. Although he was a famous master, he did not choose to become a registered official player. Instead, he threw himself into the underground racing without hesitation and eventually surpassed his master to become the recognized king of cars. The student surpassed the master. Interesting. Ryoichi Takahashi, this newcomer chose GTR just like you. Wupan Juniao shook his unique sharp voice and said with a faint smile. Ryoichi Takahashi smiled confidently. Of course, because the GTR is the most perfect racing car in the world. If it weren't for those despicable Europeans, my master would have dominated the racing world. Really? Wupan Juniao was no longer interested in talking to this nationalist. If Ryoichi Takahashi knew that Chen Guang drove a GTR only because it was not his own car at all. He drove whatever car Wang Qin gave him. Even if Wang Qin took out a magically modified Jetta, Chen Guang would still accept it. Thankfully, if it were not auto, Ryoichi Takahashi would not be able to show off. Yuan, can you take me there? I've seen his video. This newcomer is really strong. I want to chat with him. Wupan Juniao turned his head and said to his driver, Yuan, who was the champion of last year's Xiangjiang auto racing competition. Yuan thought for a moment. I can only try. He doesn't seem to like contacting outsiders. The middle-aged man sitting next to the GTR is our Mr. Tang from Xiangjiang. He has a very high status. He is a big shot who is specially escorting him. Wu Pan Junyao raised his eyebrows. Interesting, even more interesting. It's not impossible to say hello, right? Let's go. Let's try. Yuan had no choice but to bring Wu Pan Junyao to Qin Guang's direction. Before the two of them got close, they were stopped by Uncle Chang's bodyguards. However, as the champion of last year's race, Yuan was a little famous in the local area. One of the bodyguards knew Yuan and asked him politely what he was doing here. Yuan pointed to Wu Pan Junyao behind him. This is Thailand's racer king, Mr. Wu Pan Junyao. He wants to talk to the driver in this GTR. The bodyguard could not make up his mind. After thinking for a while, he asked Lu Fei for her opinion. Thailand's racer king wants to talk to you. Are you interested? Lu Fei turned to ask Qin Guang. In fact, she was very excited. The former racer king was unattainable and arrogant. Qin Guang had only finished the first round and he actually took the initiative to talk to him. The racer king was indeed the racer king. He could immediately see how good Qin Guang was and took the initiative to talk to him. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang pouted. What's there to talk about? I'm not interested. Huh? Is that so? Lu Fei was a little disappointed. She turned to look out the window, intending to say goodbye to the bodyguard. Just then, Qin Guang finally turned his head to the side and widened his eyes. F***ck. A beauty. The racer king. This girl, why are you so cool? Wait a minute. See. Of course I want to see. Aw. Alright, I give up. Lu Fei's head was about to explode from his capriciousness. When she turned around and saw his shining eyes, she understood and almost laughed out loud. As a racing fan, Lu Fei had heard of Wu Pan Juanyao's deeds. Mr. Wu Pan, you really have a lot of influence. Hearing that they were allowed to go over, Yuan was delighted. Wu Pan Junyao smiled charmingly. Of course, I'm the racer king after all. What are you going to say to him? I haven't thought about it yet. I'll just give him some encouragement. The two walked straight to the GTR's right door. On the other side, Qin Guang had already rolled down the car's window. He used the night light to size up the girl outside and secretly commented. He really did not expect that there was a woman in this world who could be the racer king. She was too beautiful. Look at her small eyes and sharp oval face. It looked like it was carved out with a knife. Her figure was great too. But would her chest be flat? Forget it. Being flat had its benefits. How could one rule the world if one's chest was flat? Hello. Qin Guang took the initiative to greet him in English. Wu Pan Junyao stood by the car door and smiled. Hello. Do you have any advice? Qin Guang said with a chuckle, wiping away the saliva that almost leaked out from the corner of his mouth. Wu Pan Junyao gently flipped his hair and pressed both hands on Qin Guang's car door. He smiled even more brightly. I have high hopes for you. You must enter the battle to protect the car. Don't let me not even have a chance to appear. Chapter 237. Qin Guang reacted quickly and reached out to grab Wu Pan Juanyao's hand from above. Of course. Usually, Qin Guang wasn't such a frivolous and daring person, but today, Master Guang's decisiveness had been influenced by the outside world. Of course, he didn't think of guarding against it at all and let the sluggishness intensify. Besides, he felt that girls who liked to race cars were quite generous. As the king of cars, this Thai girl must be the most open-minded. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had to take advantage of her. Wu Pan Juanyu's snow-white face blushed when Chen Guang suddenly grabbed his hand. He forced a smile and said, "Then I'll wait for your good news." With that, he pulled his hand away and turned to leave. After watching the beautiful king of cars walk away, Chen Guang wound up the car window and turned back to Lu Fei. "This girl is really pretty. The skin on the back of her hand is really soft. It's just that her voice is a little hoarse and sounds androgynous. I'm not spouting nonsense, but she's like you, Lu Fei, a perfect goddess. Sigh, if it weren't for the fact that I'm not interested in racing cars, it would be quite exciting to have the opportunity to form a King of Cars team with her." Lu Fei slapped Chen Guang's head. "King of Cars, my ass. He should be the King of Cars. I'm a guy." "What? A guy?" "That's right. A real man. Thailand's King of Cars, hee hee." "What the hell?" Master Guang felt nauseous and nauseous. He looked down at his hands, which still smelled of perfume. "I want to die. I feel terrible. I want to chop my hands off. I actually pinched this damn sissy's hand. And I even pinched him until his face turned red. Damn it. He can't have fallen for me, right? I'm starting to panic. Lu Fei. I don't want to live anymore. Lend me your thigh and let me cry." With that, Chen Guang turned and pounced on Lu Fei's thigh. Lu Fei was caught off guard. "Hey! Cry all you want. Lend me your thigh all you want. Why is your right hand grabbing my chest? You shoved your left hand under my butt again. I touched something impure just now. I need to touch the goddess with full marks to resist this evil power. Otherwise, I'll definitely lose today. Lu Fei, you have to help me. You're a goddess with full marks. That damn sissy just now is poisonous." Lu Fei had seen many shameless people, but she had never seen someone as shameless as this. However, in her heart, she was not against Chen Guang's shamelessness. She only turned her head away with a red face. Looking at the similarly crazy men and women outside the window, a strange feeling welled up in her heart. She was exceptionally shy, yet she was reluctant to let go of his demonic hands. "Forget it, I thought about massaging his chest yesterday anyway. Let him pinch me a little, I won't lose a piece of flesh. When he's tired of pinching me, he'll let go. Don't put your hand in there." 25 minutes later. Ruffy was almost out of breath. "It's almost time for the competition. You are in the first group. Get up." Time was running out, and everyone had already gotten into position. Chen Guang reluctantly let Lu Fei out of the car. When she finally closed the door, Chen Guang clenched his fist. "Awesome. Yesterday's butt. Today's chest. Tomorrow's upgrade." Lu Fei was not the only one planning this. Chen Guang had planned this from the beginning too. What a shameless pair of adulterers. F***CK. Why am I number 5? This is F***King cheating. When Chen Guang was directed by the competition referee to get into position, he saw his queue number and was stunned. Also, was this Dodge Viper next to him the bastard that Ruffy mentioned yesterday? Wasn't he running 137 yesterday? He was also next to me. The higher the first round, the more he would be pushed to the last 3 rows. Turning his head, Chen Guang smiled again. Fortunately, the McLaren 675 that was eating his dust yesterday was even worse off. It was already in the 4th row. Speaking of which, was the guy driving the Viper sick? What was he trying to say by rolling down the window? It was very noisy outside. He Tianzhao, who was in the Viper, was angrily waving his arms and legs at him, cursing and swearing. However, Chen Guang did not roll down the window, so he could not hear what the guy was saying. Forget it. He was so enthusiastic, so I can't just stand by and do nothing. Chen Guang only smiled at him and gave him the middle finger. Courtesy demanded reciprocity. F***ck. He Tianzhao originally wanted to provoke Chen Guang before the race and launch a psychological attack. In the end, Chen Guang did not respond at all and even gave him the middle finger. Seeing that the guy next to him was so angry that he was slapping the steering wheel, Chen Guang laughed again and turned his head to look ahead. He ignored him and let him be. Speaking of which, there was another girl in front of the starting line today. She was a girl with long black hair that suited his taste. Although her figure was not as good as the girl from yesterday, she still looked like a first-class model, especially with her long black hair that reached her waist like a waterfall. She was really beautiful. She looked noble and elegant, but unfortunately, she was still a bit loose in her bones. She was too generous. No matter what others thought, the old man could not accept his own woman being taken advantage of by others. However, on second thought, the old man was that other person now. Don't worry about who will be the one to take over her in the future. Let the old man feast his eyes first. Could it be that every group had a different type of boob-slinging girl? I missed 7 yesterday. My heart hurts. That's not right. I can't show my face. I can't stand outside with a mask on. If I wear a mask, I will be surrounded at any moment. Thinking about this, my heart hurts even more. There should be a full recording of this race. When I get back, I will ask Lu Fei to help me make a full set. Don't worry about the race, just keep a small part of the highlights. That's right. Let's do this. If others knew that the racing god of this generation, who was destined to be admired by tens of thousands of people, was only thinking about that girl who had exposed her chest in front of everyone when they set off, would those racing fans cover their faces in misery and feel ashamed for him and themselves? However, Chen Guang did not have much time to let his imagination run wild. The race was about to begin. It was different from yesterday. At that time, no one thought that the driver in this matte GTR was so amazing. But today, when the 8 mechanical beasts roared together and madly rushed forward, at least half of the people on the sidelines had their eyes on Chen Guang's car. Regardless of whether the other drivers were convinced or not, they could not hide the fact that he ran at his best yesterday. Chen Guang did not care so much. His movements were smooth and natural. Because of the right-hand steering wheel, his start yesterday was not very good. Today, it was much easier and more familiar. In the flow of traffic, Chen Guang, who was originally lagging behind, was the first to suddenly speed up and go straight to the Audi R8 in front of him. Thanks to the powerful performance that Wang Qing had spent tens of millions of yuan on, the violent 800 horsepower V12 quickly pulled to the limit to provide strong torque, coupled with the assistance of the ultra-lightweight carbon fiber body, and Chen Guang's instantaneous continuous gear changes. After 2.5 seconds, Chen Guang suddenly increased the speed to 100 km per hour. Not only that, he did not reduce the gear, but still violently hit the accelerator. He let the tachometer rush into the red zone. The number 5 matte black GTR was extremely crazy and violent from the beginning. The front of the car chased after the R8's tail. Everyone looked at this car with their mouths wide open. This lunatic. How can you speed up like this from the beginning? Your speed is indeed better than the Audi R8 in front of you, but are you not afraid of crashing into it? There are 2 cars in front of you. There is no space to overtake at all. At the same time, He Tianzhao, who was speeding up step by step in the Dodge Viper, was also shocked by the situation on his left. He thought to himself, this guy wants to get rid of me at the beginning. Dream on. Chapter 238. Number 5 GTR is speeding up. It just started and it's speeding up like crazy. It's relying on its performance to overtake the R8 and 911 in front. It's going to crash. Mr. X was indeed an experienced commentator. He had seen through Chen Guang's thoughts the moment Chen Guang started speeding up, and he spoke very quickly. But his words were still filled with disbelief. Such strong cars relying on their performance to overtake weaker cars usually only happened in the middle and late stages of a race. At the start, everyone would be squeezed together. It was obvious that they wanted to crash and forfeit the race. Before Mr. X finished speaking, the Dodge Viper on the other side of Chen Guang did the same thing. The Viper's 780 horsepower naturally aspirated engine might not be as strong and durable as the V12 turbocharged engine in the middle and late stages of acceleration, but at the starting stage of linear acceleration, it relied on its 8.4L displacement to obtain a terrifying propulsion force. The Viper is also speeding up. In the car, Chen Guang glanced at He Tianzhao's actions from the corner of his eye. He was unmoved, and the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. So, he really wants to teach me a lesson. Going against me from the start. Then come. Chen Guang's right hand suddenly exerted force, and the steering wheel swung half a circle to the left. At the moment when he was about to hit the rear of the R8, he suddenly changed direction in the traffic flow to the left sideline. He was going to overtake from the left. Almost at the same time, the Dodge Viper changed to the right. It was also going to overtake the Porsche 911 in front from the right. The fight on the mountain road had reached its climax in less than 5 seconds from the start of the race. Were these two people crazy? Everyone's mind was turning over the same thought at the same time. Even the drivers, Yuan and Wupan Junyao, had their eyelids twitching, let alone the others. Lu Fei's whole body was tense. Of course, she knew that Chen Guang's driving skills were good, but she had never seen such an intense fight that was close to risking one's life. From her point of view, Chen Guang's biggest advantage was that he could rely on his perfect control of the bends to leave others in the dust. His advantage definitely did not include this kind of situation where he would fly off the track with just a touch. The GTR and Python are about to overtake each other from both sides at the same time. Were they trying to turn the 2-lane road into a 4-lane road? The R8 and 911 were under immense pressure. They began to move closer to the center. However, there's only a little more than 2 meters of space left for the GTR and Python. Madman. Everyone today is a lunatic. Mr. X couldn't calm down at all as he roared. On the other side, Chen Guang and He Tianzhao simultaneously drove their cars into the gap between the cars in front and the edge of the road. At the same time, he switched to third gear and increased his speed crazily. Compared to these two, the R8 and 911 that were sandwiched in the middle were in an awkward position. Not only were their routes taken away, but their speed was also completely inferior. It was almost as if they were standing still. However, in reality, both of them were moving at almost 150 kilometers per hour. The slightest carelessness and a collision would result in the destruction of the car and the death of the passengers. To Chen Guang's left was the edge of the road. The trees by the roadside were so close that they seemed to be within reach. His eyes were extremely focused. A third of the left tire was already suspended above the drainage ditch. Finally, there was a burst of flame from his exhaust pipe, and the car's speed increased again. He overtook the car at close to 200 kilometers per hour. On the other side, the Dodge Python relied on a stronger thrust to quickly increase its speed to 220 kilometers per hour, and successfully overtook Chen Guang. In less than 10 seconds after the race started, the third and fourth, fifth and sixth places had changed positions. What a Crazy guy. Ryuichi Takahashi had a charming smile on his face as he said to the short and fat Japanese man beside him, Naoki, this GTR racer reminds me of a friend from many years ago. Who? Fujihara-kun. Is that so? On the other side, Ah Yuan looked disdainfully at the fans who were heaving a sigh of relief. These people are making a fuss out of nothing. He's just relying on the car's power to overtake. The Amaterasu is running pretty well too. Wupan Junyao shook his head slightly. Ah Yuan, can you calculate the width of the GTR and the space left for him by the R8? Just now, the GTR had at most half of its tires suspended. Although your friend's maneuver looks equally thrilling, there's a protective fence on his right side, there's no drainage ditch. Ah Yuan was speechless. On the other side, Lu Fei yanked Ah Jie's collar. Ah Jie. Tell me. How's the anti-collision performance of this GTR? Ah Jie's expression changed as he said in embarrassment. In order to reduce the weight and improve the acceleration, the anti-collision performance was not specially strengthened. However, part of the car body was replaced with high-strength carbon fiber, and the overall strength was improved to a certain extent, but not much compared to the original. You know, although carbon fiber is strong, it's not as tough as steel. Lu Fei let go of his grip and shook Ah Jie off. She frowned as she looked at the GTR on the big screen, which had just been pushed to the back by He Tianzhao. Her eyes were filled with unspeakable worry. Chen Guang was only occasionally crazy, but He Tianzhao's running style was famous for being arrogant. Now that he had overtaken Chen Guang was in danger. If anything happens to him, I want He Tianzhao's life. No matter what the reason is. There's no need for any unnecessary explanations. Lu Fei turned her head and said softly to Uncle Qing beside her. Uncle Qing nodded, indicating that he understood. Ah Jie, who was standing beside the two of them, listened with trepidation. On the other side, Chen Guang and He Tianzhao were fighting in the third and fourth positions. Chen Guang had tried to use the bends to overtake the GTR, but the Viper was also famous for being the king of bends. He Tianzhao's level was not bad, and he had purposely taken the road, so he had managed to overtake Chen Guang until the 7th consecutive bend. Following closely behind Chen Guang and He Tianzhao was a Subaru Winged Leopard WRX-ST that had also broken Diesel's record the day before. Although this car was not expensive, it had great potential for modification. This was not an ordinary Winged Leopard. The modifier had put in a lot of effort, and it had long been trained to be a road beast with outstanding performance. The two people in front were fighting, but the Winged Leopard driver was not in a hurry. He just steadily followed behind them, maintaining his 5th position. It was not that he did not want to overtake, but that the two people in front were too crazy. He did not want to act rashly and get himself into trouble for no reason. Actually, the ones who were the most flustered were the Jaguar and Mercedes-Benz SLS drivers who were running at the front. Yesterday, the two of them had barely managed to maintain their top 4 positions, and today was the reason why they were in the front row. After witnessing the collective explosion of the top racers yesterday, the two of them did not have much hope for today's second round. In the end, they were followed by 2 crazy people today. One was the best racer from yesterday, and the other was also in the top 3. The two in front were secretly relieved. If it was not for the Viper and GTR entangling each other, they would have been overtaken long ago. Whether it was the bends or the vehicle's performance, they were completely outclassed. It was only a matter of time before they were overtaken. Even if they managed to take the lead on the uphill section, they would not be able to hold on for the second half of the downhill section. They were just afraid that the two of them would be as unreasonable when they overtook them as when they started off. Suddenly, the engine behind them roared again, as if it was overloaded. 7 consecutive bends. In front of them was that scary Z-bend. The two crazy people behind them finally could not hold back. Chapter 239. The forest viper is about to make a move. Your friend is quite daring. Wu Pan Junyao said to Ah Yuan with a smile as he looked at the image that flashed across the huge screen. Ah Yuan nodded. The GTR's performance at the Z-turn yesterday was indeed amazing. However, He Tianzhao was a local racer from Xiangjiang and would come to the mountain track almost every day. The Z-turn was also his specialty. The Jaguar slowed down to 100 km per hour before entering the turn, and the SLS behind it also slowed down. He Tianzhao controlled his speed to close to 100 km per hour. He overtook the SLS from the inside. Chen Guang followed closely behind. The SLS racer lost the inside line. If he did not slow down, he might hit the fence. He could only slow down again. F***ck. He cursed angrily, but it was meaningless. In the blink of an eye, the Forest Viper and GTR overtook the SLS from the inside line. There was only one Jaguar left in front of them. After rushing out of the first C-turn, both of them hit the accelerator at the same time and rushed into the second turn. He Tianzhao's speed was controlled at around 105 km per hour. It was not as fast as Chenguang yesterday, but it was still faster than the Jaguar's speed of 100 km per hour. He sped up easily and got into the Jaguar's inside line. Chenguang's car maintained a distance of less than a decimeter from the Python. The two of them, one at the front and one at the back, were at nearly the same angle as they forcefully drifted on the inner lane and crossed the middle lane of the drifting Jaguar. First and second. Beautiful. Great job, Tenzhou. Ah Yuan and He Tianzhao were both Xiangjiang racers. Naturally, they would cheer for their teammate. Wu Pan Junyao squinted his eyes. Ah Yuan, you're wrong. It's not your friend who's really good. It's the GTR. Why? Ah Yuan did not understand. You know, when two cars are drifting side by side, the most difficult part is not the car in front, but the car behind. A collision will happen if you're not careful. But look at the distance between the GTR and the Forest Viper. It doesn't change at all during the drift. Such accuracy is already at the millimeter level. Even among the top 10 racers, there are less than 5 who can do this. Of course, those who can't do this are not bad. It's just that everyone has a different style. Mr. Wu Pan, can you do that? No problem. Finally, the second round of the competition became a duel between Chen Guang and He Tianzhao. Who will win? This question was asked by Mr. X on the commentary platform. However, no one laughed at his unprofessionalism. In terms of pure average speed, yesterday's GTR was 139.54, and He Tianzhao's result was above 137. Looking at the whole process, it seemed that there was a huge difference. However, in this kind of competition where people were chasing and overtaking each other, the competition was not just about absolute speed. Fighting and killing each other was the real theme, not to mention that He Tianzhao was currently in the lead. If the slightest detail was not handled properly, it could lead to the car crashing and people dying. The car racing competition wasn't just a competition of absolute speed. More importantly, it was a competition of courage and mental quality. If you can find a suitable opportunity to surpass your opponent quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly, then from then on, you can fly as high as a bird in the sky. However, if you can't rush over, or get stuck when trying to overtake, then you can't blame others. And He Tianzhao was famous in Xiangjiang not only for his absolute speed, but also for his ruthlessness and quick reflexes in this kind of chase and battle. Wanting to overtake his car was known to be harder than ascending to heaven. Even the helicopter in mid-air no longer paid attention to the people behind. The giant screen was the scene of Chen Guang driving the GTR and biting the back of the Dodge Viper. Lu Fei was nervous again. If Chen Guang was another opponent, she might not panic at all, but this He Tianzhao was a lunatic. Normally, he might be afraid of her and be relatively restrained, but Lu Fei, who also raced, knew that when the speed reached a certain limit, the burning passion of racing could ignite all the rationality of the driver. At this time, he would become incomparably dangerous. Chen Guang, what are you thinking at this time? Don't be silly. You must find an opportunity to overtake again. Lu Fei could not help but guess so. On the other side, Chen Guang felt a little bored. He yawned, squinted his eyes, swung his hand, and made another perfect and smooth turn. How could such a beautiful person be a boy? It's really a pity. Sigh, I'm also stupid. When I heard that bastard was some Thai car king, I should have thought of it long ago. I must keep this matter to myself, it's 2F** king shameful. Speaking of which, Lu Fei's body was really great. It was big, round, and elastic, almost comparable to a volleyball. Her face was also very beautiful, no wonder the grandson in front liked her. But so what? Are you half as handsome as me? Then, she would tilt her head and glance at the rear-view mirror. Once she saw my handsome face, she would be fascinated by herself. What a terrifying fight. He Tianzhao is worthy of being called the half-mountain killer. His snatching position is extremely fierce. He suppressed the GTR at the back without a chance. The GTR that showed us its peak speed yesterday was completely suppressed by him. Of course, the GTR didn't give up the opportunity either. From the beginning to the end, it was biting tightly behind Python. Every minute and every second was so thrilling and exciting. As though a violent collision would happen in the next moment. The first half of the uphill segment is about to end. Let's see the average speed of both parties, 113. Such an intense competition, both parties' speeds are shockingly fast. It's on par with the GTR's solo lead yesterday. It's about to enter an even more terrifying downhill segment. These two lunatics, it's either you die or I live. This is a battlefield. A battlefield that belongs to the racers. Mr. X's voice was still full of passion, inciting people's fear. Listening to his commentary, be it the spectating racers or the fans, they all broke into a cold sweat for the two of them. He Tianzhao slightly arched his back and stared straight ahead, then quickly drifted away. His eyes were focused on the GTR behind him, his eyes were bloodshot, flashing with madness. He kept muttering to himself, "Come on. Come on. I'm going to send you to hell. Brat, do you feel despair?" Chen Guang, who was at the back, yawned again, his left hand wiping away the tears squeezed out from his eyes. "I'm almost done playing. That D***ned sissy hurt me quite a bit. Speaking of which, will I be able to stick my head in tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it just thinking about it. Let's take down that idiot in front, the V-shaped bend in front. Bastard, don't slow down if you have the guts." Then, he suddenly sat up straight and sped up. He Tianzhao slightly cut into the inner lane, intending to slow down and enter the bend, because he knew that it was an almost 180-degree V-shaped bend in front of him. However, from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw the GTR behind him speeding up to shorten the distance between them. What is this guy trying to do? This is the downhill segment. You still dare to speed up? At this moment, the GTR suddenly moved to the right. Humph. Trying to overtake from the outer lane. Dream on. Without thinking, He Tianzhao also pulled the steering wheel to the right. He did not intend to leave any gap for the GTR. Slow down obediently. Despair. He Tianzhao smirked and looked at the rearview mirror, only to realize that there was nothing behind him. Chapter 240. At that moment, He Tianzhao first heard a strange sound from the left side of his back, followed by a click and the car vibrating slightly. Then, he heard the roar of the engine from his left side. He turned his head but could only see the right side of the GTR. In that short moment, the mad black beast had rushed in front of him. He was overtaken. What the hell happened? He Tianzhao was at a loss. The countless spectators and racers who were watching this scene through the giant screen projection were equally shocked. At that moment, the GTR made a feint, pretending to use the bend to overtake the car on the outside line. Then, when the Viper changed to the outside line, he slammed on the brakes and turned the front of the car behind the Viper. Then, he sped up and changed lanes at the same time, speeding up while cutting into the inside line. The front of the GTR and the rear of the Viper were getting closer as he sped up. The moment he cut into the inside line, they collided. Sparks flew. Maybe it was an accident, or maybe it was within the GTR's driver's expectations, but the slight collision did not affect his speed at all. Then, he completely took over the inside line. He used a higher speed to overtake the car on the yellow line. He Tianzhao roared, "I won't let you succeed." As he roared, he sped up and forced the front of the car onto the inside line. But it was too late. His speed was too fast and he could no longer take over the inside line. Humph. I can't even stand on the inside line. You're at least 140 kilometers per hour. Let's see how you cross the bend. Just wait for your death. He Tianzhao tried his best to control the car and looked coldly at the GTR in front of him. Huh? What? Why is it the side? He's facing me. In front of him, Chen Guang's GTR had already turned sideways. It was almost at a right angle to the road. He wanted to cross the V-shaped bend at 140 kilometers per hour. That was the only way. That was to directly drift across with inertia, and when drifting halfway, forcibly use the momentum to provide a forward thrust to straighten the path. This was inertial drift. It's actually inertial drift. The feint he made earlier wasn't just to deceive me, it was also to adjust the car's position before the inertial drift. He Tianzhao felt a chill run down his spine. He had been completely fooled. Up ahead, Chen Guang's rear end first swung past the sharp end of the V-shaped curve. Then, the front of the car cut across the curve, and the car continued to drift sideways towards the fence next to the curve. But just as the car was about to hit the fence, the abundant power finally pulled the car back. There was only a series of dazzling sparks on the railing before he completely straightened the front of the car and accelerated. Charge! With an indomitable aura, Chen Guang snatched first place for the first time. No! He Tianzhao roared crazily. He would never accept such a clean defeat. Lu Fei. I said that I would teach this person a lesson. I'm going to knock him off the cliff. He Tianzhao gritted his teeth and sped up again. This time, he only wanted to charge at the GTR's tail. He wanted to hit the GTR's tail when it made a turn and make the GTR completely lose control. But how was that possible? Chen Guang had had enough. He was a little unhappy that he had been overtaken in the first half of the race. Now that he had finally familiarized himself with the track, he couldn't possibly be worse than yesterday, right? I'll just be a little more serious. I'll run an average speed of 145 kilometers per hour today. The next curve was supposed to be an ordinary C-shaped curve, but Chen Guang suddenly used the amazing divine drift that he had seen yesterday. It was as accurate as a machine and as stable as Mount Tai. It was just right and flawless. The car was completely stuck to the side of the curve, and the speed was pushed to the limit. He forcefully made the turn at a terrifying speed of 150 kilometers per hour again. The weeds growing under the guardrail were crushed, but the distance between the car and the guardrail was precisely controlled at 3 millimeters, without the slightest deviation. He Tianzhao only wanted to crash into it, but he realized in despair that the GTR was getting further and further away from him. The divine drift at the Z-shaped curve yesterday wasn't a coincidence. This was the scene that gave the audience in front of the giant screen the most impact. Then, he made another 2 consecutive hairpin turns. Before the audience could recover from the shock of the C-shaped curve, he continued to drift to the side without slowing down. They were devastated. There was actually someone in the world who could drive a car to such an extent. To be able to control this crazy sprinting machine as precisely as a human's fingers. Me. No. I give up. This is my home track. He Tianzhao went completely crazy. He had never experienced such a desperate race. The GTR was like a black devil, quickly devouring him. His dignity as a racer, his pride as a man, was being crushed bit by this person. The taillights of the GTR seemed to be laughing at his eyes coldly. He was so indignant and resentful. This level of drifting. I can do it too. Different from usual, He Tianzhao also pulled the speed to 150 kilometers per hour when he entered the curve. He was going all out. He believed that he could do what the GTR could do, and he had to do it. Then, the front of his car slammed into the guardrail. The car suddenly lost its balance and swung violently, spinning several times in the middle of the road. The rear of the car slammed into the side of the mountain and finally stopped. He Tianzhao tilted his neck, which was almost broken, and stared at the GTR in front of him, which was continuously swerving through an S-curve on the downhill road. He was in despair. He unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the car door with great difficulty, and flipped out of the car. He fell head first into the gutter, and looked up at the broken front axle. His heart was filled with sadness. He could only withdraw from the race. When Chen Guang really finished the whole race at an average speed of 145 kilometers per hour, he disappeared into the darkness again under the protection of the organizing committee's security personnel. More than 50,000 people on the huge mid-mountain racetrack were silent, staring at the data displayed on the giant screen with their mouths agape, unable to speak for a long time. Total time, 7 minutes 25 seconds 88 seconds. Average speed, 145. 33 seconds. What was going on with this world? Was the mid-mountain racetrack secretly widened? Speaking of which, his time in the first half of the uphill road was the same as yesterday, and he was still entangled with Python. Did that mean that he only sped up in the second half of the race, and then he broke the record? The news of the GTR familiarizing itself with the track this afternoon, along with the power of another new record, gradually spread among the crowd. This group of people was even more confused. In other words, yesterday was that person's first time running the mid-mountain racetrack. Today, after familiarizing himself with the track, he exerted himself in the second half of the race, and ran an average speed of 145. 33. What kind of joyful racing was that? Was he driving a GTR or an F1? Lu Fei smiled brightly, especially when she saw He Tianzhao's miserable state. She felt even more comfortable. Previously, she was still regretting that the last 4 places in the same group as Chen Guang did not have a valuable car. Now, He Tianzhao's Dodge Viper, which cost a lot of money to modify and was worth a lot, had withdrawn from the race. Needless to say, Jenny Turtle, it's you. This car, for example, was a new car worth about 5 million yuan, and He Tianzhao had invested at least 4 million yuan in modification costs, so the total value was more than 9 million yuan. Thank you so much for giving me such a big gift in the second round. Just as he had expected, Chen Guang's call came shortly after and asked, "He Tianzhao's car then?" "No matter how much it costs. Even if it's a loss, the old man will admit it." Lu Fei grinned. "It won't be a loss. That car is worth about 9 million yuan. You should be happy." "Ha! He's really the boy of fortune. If he hadn't asked for it, I might not have been able to get his car." Chen Guang's lips split into a wide grin. Chapter 241. Jia was speechless as he listened to the conversation between the two men. Before this, he had suspected that this racing god bro was here for fun, or perhaps he was here for the championship of the first 4 rounds. But now, he was 100% sure. This guy was a bandit. He really wanted to take the car away. Sister Lu Fei was his mistress. These two men were robbers. You have such a strong motive. Are you worthy of us, the fans and racers who love our cars? Jia looked at Wu Pan Junyao and Takahashi Ryoichi, who were standing on both sides in the distance. He thought to himself, is he really going to use my GTR to become the king of cars? Then, I'll be recorded in the history books. With that thought in mind, Jia gradually became excited again. On the other hand, due to He Tianzhao's accident, the next round of the race was temporarily postponed. The race only resumed after He Tianzhao's car was towed away. He Tianzhao himself was sent to the hospital. Before he left, he gave the car key to a friend. He knew that once he withdrew from the race, he would fall to 8th place. According to the rules of the race, he was not allowed to take the car away. But until then, he still did not think that he might lose his beloved car. He Tianzhao boasted that he and Lu Fei knew each other after all. She wouldn't not give him face, right? About an hour later, when his friend really called to tell him the bad news, He Tianzhao thought he had heard wrong. "What did you say? Say it again." As he spoke, because he was too emotional, he twisted his body violently. There was a cracking sound in his neck. The bone that he had just corrected was automatically dislocated again. "Your car has been targeted. It's locked. Brother Tianzhao, what do we do now?" The person on the other end of the phone did not know that He Tianzhao was in big trouble again. He spoke anxiously. He Tianzhao's eyes were spinning wildly, but he could not say a word. "Brother Tianzhao, say something. F*CKU. That was the only thought in He Tianzhao's mind before he fainted. Then, he vaguely heard the scream of the nurse, and then he knew nothing else. Chen Guang was not very happy. Although it was not bad to be able to get He Tianzhao's Viper, he calculated the total amount of money he had and could not bring himself to do so. Damn it, the winner of the first round is 1 million. Fine, I'll bear with it even if it's a little less. If you win the second round, you'll give me 1.5 million. Even though it's a little less, I can still bear with it. But what's the point of 2.5 million for 2 rounds? No matter how he thought about it, he felt that the organizing committee was humiliating the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail. We will accept this grudge. Lu Fei helped him open the lockbox and grinned. Don't worry, there's one more in here. This is 1.5 million and $100. You're not an idiot anymore. Chen Guang's anger immediately turned into joy, and he gave a thumbs up. Well done. More than an hour after the end of the second round of the race, the atmosphere on the mid-mountain racetrack had yet to cool down. Less than half of the 50,000 people had left. There were too many people standing in front of the giant screen, watching the GTR footage being replayed over and over again. Their minds were bombarded by the terrifying average speed of 145.33. No one would have thought that in just one day, the GTR would once again break its own fastest record. When he ran 139.54 yesterday, some people thought that it was just an accidental outperformance. But when it broke its own record again, and performed the terrifying drifting without deceleration again and again, the world finally understood that 139.54 was far from the limit of the GTR. Perhaps 145.33 was also not its limit. Both the racer and the fans felt a strong sense of oppression from the GTR. He wasn't arrogant, and up until now, no one had seen the racer get out of the car. However, people were still suffocated by the records he left behind. They thought of the nickname of the GTR, God of War. Then, the mad GTR driven by that person, would it add the word invincible to the title God of War? Invincible God of War. But that wasn't the only thing that left him in despair. In the second round, no one managed to break past his 139.54 mark. The fastest was only 139.21 for the McLaren 675, which was pushed to second by Chen Guang yesterday. Not to mention today's 145.33. Even though the race was over, none of the racers were willing to leave. Instead, they joined hands and asked the organizing committee to allow them to train overnight. One super sports car after another roared as they set off. These people didn't dare to hope that they could run a result comparable to the mad GTR in the competition. Even if they ran without any interference, it would be good to close the gap between them. Finally, some people gradually broke through the barrier of 139.54 in their desperate charge, and some even crossed the previously unattainable limit of 140. However, up until now, each of the remaining 16 racers had run at least 2 laps, and the fastest record was only above 142, still far from 145.33. Such a gap, how despairing was it? Just then, 2 big trucks arrived almost at the same time. The heavy trucks attracted a lot of people's attention. Everyone frowned. It was so late. Did someone still bring their car here? In the parking lot, 2 groups of people moved almost at the same time. Whether it was the racers or the fans, they all understood. It was Pan Junyao and Ryoichi Takahashi's cars. Were the 2 car kings also going to try? Were they already preparing to participate in the race to protect their cars? Indeed, looking at the momentum of the GTR, could anyone take the championship away from him? Was there any other way other than knocking him off the track at the beginning? Sure enough, they could only rely on the car king. When this thought emerged in everyone's mind, the hearts of the people who were almost suffocated by the mad GTR began to burn again. No one realized that the low-key Matt supercar had become the big devil that everyone expected the car king to defeat. Wasn't the car king the big devil that should be defeated? Some people also realized the problem with this thought. They were suddenly enlightened and surprised. Pan Junyao and Ryoichi Takahashi didn't need to say much to ask others to make way for them. When the 2 of them respectively drove the pitch-black Tiger CTR and another GTR covered in flames to the starting line, all the cars at the front of the track automatically made way for them. Even the racers who were in the middle of the race were left in the middle of the 2 parking lots and sat down quietly in front of the giant screen. The helicopter that had been parked on the tarmac suddenly took off. Mr. X, who was about to go home after a busy day, sat down on the commentary stage again. Under the night sky, the Night Beauty and the Flame War God were each warming up their engines. The air suddenly became extremely heavy. No one dared to breathe. Ah Yuan, the previous champion, held the starting gun and stood at the starting line as the referee. He raised his right hand high. Bang! Boom! The pitch-black phantom and the raging flames entangled each other and suddenly rushed out. Chapter 242. One was black, the other was red. Two streaks of light, one was demonic, the other violent. Takahashi Junyao and Takahashi Ryoichi played their respective characteristics to the extreme. Takahashi Ryoichi was like a flaming meteor that would never retreat, always driving at the extreme speed of him and his car. He even scraped his car on the guardrail more than once, creating a long string of sparks. Wupan Junyao, on the other hand, was like a venomous snake lurking in the grass, flicking his tongue and eyeing his prey covetously. As long as he was given the slightest chance, he would fiercely pounce forward and take a bite. Then, he would proudly swing his tail and throw the other party far away. One was as elegant as the wind, while the other was as fierce as fire. In just a little more than 7 minutes, the two great car kings had given everyone who was still here an extremely exciting race. When the two of them crossed the finish line almost at the same time, the audience had yet to recover from the intense battle that left them breathless. Unlike the previous race, the two car kings were supposed to be a training race to learn from each other, but it seemed to be filled with a strong smell of gunpowder that could not be melted. Almost every moment was filled with a dangerous atmosphere. In the eyes of others, the two car kings were always hanging by a thread. If it were not these two car kings, but anyone else who dared to go tit for tat like these two would have already flipped over and fallen off the cliff. When they saw the data displayed on the giant screen, there was only one word left in everyone's mind. As expected of the car king. Strong. The average speed of the two was exactly the same. 146.45. Perhaps there would be a slight difference after the decimal point, but at least in this training race, the two were completely tied. What was more terrifying was that they were fighting from the beginning to the end, and they both broke the GTR record. As expected of the car king. At the finish line, the two Beast-class supercars, CTR and GTR, were parked side by side. Takahashi Ryoichi got out of the car, lit a cigarette, and took a deep breath. Many people say that you, the young car king, have regressed in the past few years, but I don't think so. Takahashi Junyao also stood next to the car and smiled charmingly. It's all right. The two looked up at the giant screen together. He broke his record. Takahashi Ryoichi pretended to be indifferent and complacent. He didn't need to say something for others to understand. He was the one who was best at controlling the GTR in the world. Wupan Junyao didn't say anything else. He vaguely understood that the person wearing the V Special Agent Team mask today was still not in the right state. What was the limit of that mysterious man? The more he thought about it, the more he felt the blood in his body heating up. He really wanted to see that guy seriously run. By the way, has anyone contacted Schroeder? Will that German guy come too? Ryoichi Takahashi suddenly said without thinking. Wupan Junyao shook his head. I don't know. Some time ago, I heard that the German took a group of friends to go rock climbing in the wild. God knows what kind of strange cliff he is hanging on. He won't be able to return to civilized society anytime soon. The German Schroeder's car was produced by Gumpert Apollosport, which used to be a professional modification factory and was now a niche manufacturer of sports cars. Whether it was the regular North Ring of the Nürburgring or the underground drag racing track, Schroeder was always the well-deserved hegemon. Since Schroeder became the king of the Nürburgring 7 years ago, he had never been defeated. Whether it was Wupan Junyao or other car kings, Schroeder did not choose to participate in the competition when they reached the peak. Perhaps it was unfortunate or fortunate. But even so, no one dared to question the ability of the king of Nürburgring, known as the Son of the Sun. His style was more violent than Ryoichi Takahashi's, but his control was as precise as a German-made machine. He was an impeccable man on the track. At this time, He Tianzhao, who had just woken up from a coma again, gritted his teeth and forced the nurse to hand the phone to him. He called a Chinese engineer from Schroeder's modification team. Others couldn't contact Schroeder at this time, but he could. He wanted to protect his beloved car, and he wanted to invite the son of the sun. On the other side, Chen Guang didn't care about what was going on outside. He was lying in bed and happily chatting with someone on the phone. It was Sun Xiaoxuan who called. Chen Guang was actually quite surprised to receive a call from the gentle and beautiful class monitor in the dead of night, but he felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart. He had only been out for 2 days, but the 2 nights of intense racing had quickly turned him from a college student to an underground racer who was about to dominate the competition. This change of mentality came so suddenly that he didn't have the slightest time and space to prepare himself mentally. Even though he was still joking with Lu Fei a second before entering his bedroom, the moment he closed the door, exhaustion quickly enveloped him. He was not tired from racing, but purely because as a young man, he didn't know what to do with this sudden change of identity. Why did he always like to turn his mind to other places and force himself to be absent-minded during the race? It was because he didn't like racing at all. However, no matter how much he hated racing, Chen Guang had no choice. He didn't want to retreat. Even if it was only for the possibility of earning a huge sum of money, he could only grit his teeth and bear it. Suddenly seeing Sun Xiaoxuan's name on his phone, he was stunned for a moment before he remembered that in addition to being a racer, he was also a college student who skipped the final exams. "Are you asleep?" Sun Xiaoxuan's slightly trembling first sentence made Chen Guang, who was sitting by the window, tremble all over. "No. You sound tired." Sun Xiaoxuan's voice trembled more and more. Separated by thousands of kilometers and 2 cell phones, he had only said 2 words, but she could actually hear the fatigue in his heart. Chen Guang grinned. "What nonsense are you talking about?" No, I'm so happy. When I come back, I'll treat you guys to a big meal. Treat the whole class. Treat the guests. 3 days. You went to earn money. What kind of job can make millions in a few days? Don't mess around. Sun Xiaoxuan said in a panic. Chen Guang was silent for a moment, and finally couldn't help but say, "Wait for me on Weibo. There's a topic that doesn't have a lot of attention, called Hong Kong car gambling race. You can take a look. In fact, this topic has more attention than that. Maybe it's suppressed by Weibo. Thank God it didn't block it directly. You went underground to race. How could you?" Sun Xiaoxuan exclaimed. "Why can't I? I need money, too much money. You know that." Okay, don't worry. I'm still waiting to treat you guys to a big meal. I'll be fine even if the sky falls down. By the way, the most popular photo in that topic is me in a black GTR. Wait a minute, let me check Weibo first." He didn't expect Sun Xiaoxuan to be so anxious and immediately went to check Weibo. Chen Guang was not in a hurry and kept waiting. Although long distance and roaming were very expensive, the roaming fee was nothing when he thought about the tens of thousands of yuan that Lu Li had to spend every month. 5 or 6 minutes later, her voice came again. "Invincible God of War GTR. Yes. That's me. Awesome, right?" Sun Xiaoxuan, on the other end of the phone, suddenly cried. Chen Guang was silent again. Sun Xiaoxuan's crying made him a little sad. He could hear that she wanted to help him so much. She absolutely didn't want him to race, but she couldn't do anything about this kind of thing. Even if he was called the invincible God of War, even if he forced himself to look indifferent in front of her, he couldn't stop her heart from being pulled. He didn't know how long she cried, but she was finally able to speak while sobbing. "Chen Guang, you must come back alive. After this incident, I'll never go racing again. I beg you. We are students. How can students race? Today, we had a physics and chemistry exam. I did very well. Bai Fan and Xiong Jinka both failed. They'll be accompanying you for the makeup exam next semester. Wait, I'll send the revision courseware I made to your email. Remember to take a look at it when you're free. She said a lot of things on and off, and Chen Guang didn't even have a chance to interrupt. Achoo! She sneezed violently. You're hiding outside the dormitory and calling me, right? You're wearing too little. Hurry and go back. I'll go in now. Rest early. You can't make any mistakes in racing. Please don't. I like. Beep beep beep. Sun Xiaoxuan hung up. Chen Guang put down his phone and turned his head to look out the window to the west, a look of disappointment on his face. Great, he felt even more tired now. Forget it. I'll just give it my all this time. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on his bedroom door. The only person who would knock at this time was Lu Fei. What was she going to do? Chapter 243. If it was another time, Chen Guang wouldn't be thinking about what she was going to do, but what he could do with her right now. But right now, after he hung up the call with Sun Xiaoxuan, Chen Guang couldn't help but think about the little girl who was hiding on the balcony outside the dormitory thousands of miles away, quietly talking to him on the phone against the cold night wind. Sun Xiaoxuan's sneeze was like a knife stabbing into his heart, ruthlessly cutting open a crack in his heart defense. Chen Guang was surprised to find that what he wanted to do the most now was to turn on the computer and look at the physics and chemistry review material she sent. But since Lu Fei knocked on the door, he had to open the door. When he opened the door, he didn't know where she found a set of silk purple suspender pajamas and put it on. She put one hand on the door frame and stretched out the other hand. She stuck out her index finger and put it on Chen Guang's chin. Tell me, who were you talking to on the phone? It was at least 15 minutes. Stop fooling around, I was asking a classmate about the final exam. Chen Guang waved his hand to push Lu Fei's finger away and turned his head swiftly. Well, although he didn't want to admit it, Lu Fei was really a bit annoying. Especially when she deliberately posed like this, the purple color brought about a mysterious sense of charm. Under the slender suspenders, the neckline was also extremely open. There was no need for any special angle of light to easily see the cleavage of her cleavage. What was even more shameful was that this woman was clearly naked under the pajamas. The peaks of two mountains, well, I can't think anymore. If I think anymore, the grapes will be ripe. Chen Guang sat in front of the computer seriously and shook his head slightly. Humph. Which? You want to plot against me. You want to embarrass me. You want to make the old man look like a pervert and then play with the old man. You want to make the old man draw a map tonight. In your dreams. Chen Guang didn't believe that Lu Fei really wanted to seduce him into her bed. After interacting with this woman for 2 days, Chen Guang believed that he had a good understanding of her behavior. The more she acted like she was throwing herself at him, the more he couldn't fall for her trick. Otherwise, he would only be seen as a fool by her. Sure enough, Chen Guang's reaction left Lu Fei stunned for a brief moment. Shortly after, she chuckled as she stood behind Chen Guang. Chen Guang had actually opened his mailbox to download the courseware and started reading it. Lu Fei showed a deep smile on her face. This kid, indeed, was not easy to deal with. Just now, when Chen Guang was on the phone, she really put her ear to the door to hear something. Unfortunately, the sound insulation of the bedroom door in a 5-star hotel was too good. Even if her ears were about to be squashed, she could only vaguely hear some murmurs. For a moment, she also couldn't bear it. She was really curious about which little girl was fooled by this pervert. In order to further verify the idea that Qin Guang was a pervert, when he finished the phone call, Lu Fei immediately changed her equipment and planned to give him a little surprise. In the end, he actually didn't fall for it. This made Lu Fei feel frustrated and happy at the same time. Although he was indeed a poor loser, he was really different from ordinary poor teenagers. Was that your girlfriend just now? Lu Fei was behind Qin Guang. She put her hands on his shoulders and gently rubbed them. Damn it! She started to use the advanced attack. I won't fall for it. Absolutely won't fall for it. Physical and chemical absolute defense. Dispel. Qin Guang stared at the courseware that Sun Xiaoxuan carefully prepared for him. It was undeniable that this simple courseware with a pink background did condense a lot of Sun Xiaoxuan's efforts. She used her deep understanding of this subject to clearly explain the profound and simple terms in this courseware. Qin Guang only read the beginning and felt that the effect was better than listening to the teacher's lecture. He only snorted, "Not my girlfriend, I'm the class monitor." Alright, don't think about fooling me. I'll read for a while and then go to sleep. Alright, if you really want to massage my shoulders, please use a little more force with your left hand. I've been using my left hand to change gears for the past 2 days. Most of the time, it's a bit difficult, unlike my right hand which already has muscle memory. My left hand is still a little tired and a little sore. Lu Fei's expression turned cold. She sighed in her heart. Sure enough, even God would get tired. She turned around and went out the door. She wrapped a coat over her pajamas and pulled a chair to sit behind Qin Guang. She actually started to massage Qin Guang's shoulders. Lu Fei didn't know how long she had been massaging until Qin Guang's head leaned against the chair in front of her. He actually fell asleep just like that. Lu Fei patted Qin Guang's back. Get up and sleep on the bed. Qin Guang opened his eyes in a daze. He turned around and started snoring on the bed. His brain was a mess. He had been racing earlier, and now his physical and chemical defense had accidentally turned into absolute hypnosis. His drowsiness was unstoppable. Lu Fei helped him turn off the computer. She looked at the light pink background of the PowerPoint courseware and smiled. She thought that the class monitor he was talking about must like him. As for himself, he might more or less have some feelings for the class monitor, but their relationship was definitely not at that level. Lu Fei roughly understood Qin Guang. Since he said they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, it definitely wasn't at that level. Even if that was the case, what did it matter? What made me willing to be molested by him wasn't Qin Guang as a person, nor was it his identity as a student. It was just his incomparably domineering driving skills. I'll just take it as a souvenir for all those years of deviant love for racing. As the saying goes, good cars and beautiful women. If there was a good car, there would naturally be beautiful women. Together with the GTR, which was about to become a legend, he was able to form the second half of the beautiful car for the best racer in the world. His love for racing for so many years wasn't in vain. As for the result, that wasn't important. What future did she want? Could a woman marry a good driver? Was the future important? I'm not satisfied either. I'll let you go tonight, but wait until tomorrow. I don't believe you can still calm down in that environment. Lu Fei said through gritted teeth. But when Qin Guang's hand really got into the gap of her leather pants, she regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. Lu Fei covered her face and didn't dare to look at Qin Guang next to her. The music outside was deafening, and colorful lights shone into her eyes from time to time through the gaps between her fingers. The feeling of skin touching kept surging up from her buttocks and invading her scalp. Weren't you pretty tsundere last night? I just said it casually, and you really put your hand in. Qin Guang narrowed his eyes, but he looked out of the window with vigilance at all times, guarding against anyone coming over to peek. He was as nervous as a thief, and his heart was beating like a fully oiled engine. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. The old man never dreamed that her skin here would be so smooth and delicate. I must have taken the wrong medicine yesterday and missed the opportunity. My intestines are green with regret. Two people with green intestines were locked together in the narrow space of this legendary supercar. Their heavy breathing seemed to suppress the music outside. Chapter 244. When he saw his old friend from the first round again in the third round, Chen Guang was actually quite surprised. He didn't expect that the Mitsubishi EVO, which he thought was a weakling, would stumble through 2 rounds and make it into the third round. However, this guy's dream was destined to end here. First place, hee hee. Also, the old man was already number 8. Organizing committee, do you have to be so straightforward? I protest. I'm a fan of Bei Shui. I'm also in the last row, at least give me number 7. I should at least feel a little better. There were more people paying attention to Chen Guang today than yesterday. If it weren't for the 2 kings breaking the average speed record of 145.33 last night, the others would have thought that the Matte GTR was completely invincible. What do you think he can do tonight? Yesterday he killed He Tianzhao, and tonight he's in the same group as Ah Yuan. This guy really has a deep affinity with our local racers. I can't say for sure, but there's no doubt that the other 7 cars won't let him have an easy time. He's already won twice in a row, and if he gets first place again, he'll be able to pick his car again. I'm afraid that no one would want their car to be locked. Therefore, from this round onwards, everyone is his enemy. I think it's hard to say whether or not he can create another miracle. There was a lot of discussion in the crowd, but not many people doubted the strength of the Matte GTR anymore. Of course, the focus of everyone's doubts gradually shifted to whether or not he would be able to withstand the targeted suppression that would appear in the race from now on. If he could maintain a clean sweep of the first and second rounds until the third round, it meant that he had a chance to truly enter the stage of protecting his car. It didn't matter if it was the racers who had already been locked, or the racers who didn't want to be locked in this round, they were all united to prevent him from continuing to win. Apart from that, the organizing committee's very targeted ranking arrangement was also to prevent the winners of the first 2 rounds from continuing to win. In the past, almost 90% of the racers in the race fell in the third round. It was already very difficult to barely maintain the top 4 in this round. Last year's champion, Ah Yuan, had come in second place in the third round and lost the right to start the race. It was also because of the extremely unfair rules of the race that the status of every racer who had the last laugh rose sharply, becoming the undisputed king of cars. Moreover, there were only 10 racing kings in the entire world. Behind every great achievement of a Che Wang, there were stumbling blocks that fell under his wheels one after another. Apart from that, more and more people stood out and became the kings of their generation. These car kings would always appear in the major gambling arenas because of various invitations or because they took the initiative to come out and become the final obstacle. That was why no new car king had been born in the past 3 years. At this moment, Chen Guang didn't think too much about it. He was just looking around in boredom. On his right was a car that looked like a commonly used WRC rally car. Judging from the logo, it was a Volkswagen. But obviously, this rally car wasn't as simple as it looked. Whether it was the suspension, the power, or even the tires, they were all tailored to the track of the Xiangjiang car racing competition. Even though it looked a bit like an ordinary family car with a sports cover, it was actually equipped with a terrifyingly powerful engine. Including the technical cost of the modification, the value of the whole car was at least 5 million yuan. The owner of this car was Wu Pan Juniao's disciple in name. He was currently the most popular driver in Xiangjiang. Last year, he relied on this car to win the championship 3 times in the first 4 rounds and finally enjoyed the grand prize of 7 million yuan. But at this time, the former champion didn't have the confidence to win. On the contrary, he had a headache. Before the teams came out, he didn't expect that he would meet this GTR so soon. Originally, he hoped that the two of them would meet in the 4th round. What made Yuan even more distressed was that before he set off, he deliberately asked Wu Pan Junyao about the shortcomings of the Mat GTR drivers from the Thai Car King, who was both a teacher and a friend. Unexpectedly, Wu Pan Junyao just raised his eyebrows. Although I don't think there's a racer who is truly perfect in all aspects in the world, I really haven't been able to find the shortcomings of this GTR so far. Don't ask me, just run according to your own habits. You're currently the strongest racer in Xinjiang. You're also in the top 10 in Asia. Don't lose your momentum right from the start. In the end, Wu Pan Junyao didn't say anything, and Yuan couldn't do anything about it. Forget it, I'll just grit my teeth and run. At least get the 2nd place first. Although the person next to him was good, wasn't his record yesterday surpassed by Wu Pan Junyao and Takahashi Ryo? He shouldn't be unbeatable, right? Yuan curiously turned his head to look at the window on his left. He really wanted to know what that person was doing at this time. With the lights on both sides of the starting line, Yuan clearly saw the face hidden under the V Special Agent Team mask. At this time, that person was staring straight ahead, extremely focused. Yuan took a deep breath. What a terrifying momentum. As expected of the top racer that Mr. Wu Pan thought was flawless. Looks like the average speed of 145.33 yesterday was indeed not his limit. I hope that I can also run the most perfect race of my life in this pinnacle duel with him today. I've also used a lot of new technology on my car this year. Then, Yuan followed Chen Guang's gaze and looked forward as well. F***CK. This guy is looking at the racer girls. When he turned his head again, he was right. This guy was drooling at the corner of the V Special Agent Team's smiling face. Alright, the girl in front is quite pretty, but as a top racer, which racer doesn't lack women? Don't destroy your invincible image in my heart. Forget it, I'm also starting from the last row. I don't want to fail miserably at such an easy task. It took a lot of effort for Yuan to recover from the heavy blow that Chen Guang gave him, and he regained his focus. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, it was the last moment before the race. Yuan had already focused all his energy, staring straight ahead. His right foot kept tapping lightly on the accelerator, and his left hand held the handbrake tightly, ready to launch at any time. Hot blood slowly welled up from the bottom of his heart. Yuan had already made up his mind. Before entering the first turn, he had to overtake at least one car. I'm going to beat this guy on my left. Bang! The starting gun sounded. All 8 cars started to move. However, Yuan could clearly feel that the engine of the GTR on his left was a beat slower than him. This guy was distracted looking at the girl. Chapter 245. This was not Chen Guang's fault. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame the competition committee for their viciousness. Every time, the girls sent to give out benefits were prettier than the last. F***CK, they could also level up along with the competition. The old man couldn't help but fall in love with the long, straight black hair yesterday. Today, the short-haired girl was practically a movie star, all right? To others, it might be a common sight, but to an old virgin like the old man, it was a shameful stumbling block on his path to success. Fortunately, Master Guang remembered that getting rich was more important, so he stopped in time. Although he was slower than Yuan by about 0.5 seconds, it was only a difference of half a car's length. With the previous round's opening double overtaking by Chen Guang and He Tianzhao as a reference, the lad in front of Chen Guang had learned his lesson. He stealthily pressed down on the outside line from the start, not giving Chen Guang any chance to overtake him. Chen Guang was already mentally prepared for this. He could only thank the heavens that you didn't intentionally step on the brakes to fight for the benefits of the racers in front of you. I have to thank you for your competitive spirit. On the other side, Yuan had gotten a great bargain. The guy in front of Chen Guang had purposely moved a meter to the left in order to suppress Chen Guang's route. The guy in front of Yuan had wanted to move to the right to suppress Yuan's route. As a result, there was an entire car's length gap between the two of them. Chen Guang had seen this opportunity before Yuan. Unfortunately, he had been distracted for half a second, and the gap of half a car's length had caused him to lose his chance. Instead, he could only watch as Yuan happily sped up and pressed forward. He had gotten a great surprise for nothing. On the short 300-meter straight road before the first turn, Yuan had completed his goal the moment he set off, and had even exceeded his expectations. As for Chen Guang's situation, it could be summed up in one sentence from Lu Fei. It's over. He's already lagging behind from the start. Those who could make it through 2 rounds of elimination and enter the 3rd round were not easy to deal with. Even the Mitsubishi EVO, which was originally a rookie, had been forcibly modified in the past 2 days. They added 2 superchargers and forcibly increased the maximum horsepower of the engine to close to 700. The Indian young man, Udall, was running more and more smoothly. He had the demeanor of a young knight temptress. His turns were smooth and graceful like the wind. His boss was right. Udall was indeed a genius that only appeared once every few decades. Unfortunately, he had met Chen Guang. If we don't think of something now, I'm afraid he won't be able to break out of the encirclement. Jia said worriedly beside Lu Fei, other people would rather let Yuan overtake them than let him overtake them easily. Lu Fei nodded. From the looks of it, there's nothing he can do on the straight road. I guess he can only count on the bend. Of course, Chen Guang himself had already realized where the problem lay. The feeling of being the enemy of the entire world was indeed unpleasant. But it didn't matter, this was just the beginning. If he's only at this level, it seems like we shouldn't have come here. It was unknown when Takahashi Ryoichi and Wupan Junyao were standing together again. Takahashi Ryoichi was raising his chin arrogantly and looking coldly at the GTR that had fallen to the back. Wupan Junyao was quite talkative today. He shook his head. Don't worry. At that Z-turn, he will definitely make a move. That place is his absolute domain. There was some disdain on Takahashi Ryoichi's face, but he didn't say anything. Just as Wupan Junyao said, the performance of the pitch-black GTR at the first perverse Z-turn was indeed terrifying. Putting aside the skills he had shown in other stages, just by looking at that Z-turn, he was invincible. Among the people present, there were no experts at the level of Wupan Junyao and Takahashi Ryoichi, but there were a lot of critics who were good at watching others race. On the commentary platform, Mr. X directly pointed out this matter in the broadcast. If this car intends to continue to create miracles in this race, then he must start overtaking its Z-turn at the latest. Everyone was waiting for him to reproduce his Z-turn stunt. However, this time, Chen Guang was the first to choose not to play by the rules. He made a move ahead of time. The 7 consecutive turns before the Z-turn. When others slowed down a little, intending to make a stable turn, he suddenly accelerated and pulled directly to the outside line. Before the Porsche 911 in 7th place could react, Chen Guang had already rushed past the guardrail on his outside line. He overtook. He overtook at the first turn of the 7 consecutive turns. Idiot. Stupid. He Tianzhao, who had forcibly rushed out of the hospital today despite the doctor's obstruction and asked someone to send him here, waved his hand fiercely. He was furious. Then, his neck twisted again. Because of Uncle Qing, He Tianzhao did not dare to try to use any dirty tricks on Chen Guang or Lu Fei, but he had secretly contacted some local driver friends, wanting them to secretly suppress Chen Guang in the race. For example, the driver of the Porsche 911 was a friend of He Tianzhao's, but unfortunately, he was not very impressive. The distance between the 7 cars had never been pulled apart. After Chen Guang overtook the first opponent, he had to face the next turn of the 7 consecutive turns without stopping, and his next prey. This time, the guy in front had learned his lesson. Although he had to slow down when entering the turn, he quietly pulled the car towards the outside line, not leaving any chance for Chen Guang to overtake him on the outside line. However, this time, Chen Guang rushed fiercely towards his inside line again. There was no drift. He was running with his hands on the ground. This was not logical. Even with the strongest vehicle stability system, it was impossible to hold on to the steering wheel at such a high speed. What the hell happened? The data analysis on the giant screen and the slow-motion replay once again solved the mystery of Chen Guang, but it only made people gasp. At the beginning of the design, the first generation of the GTR R32 could not drift at all. This car could be regarded as one of the modern ancestors of the running with the hands on the ground. The R32 used an extremely advanced body stability system at the time, and the choice of suspension and tires was also the most fundamental goal of firmly grasping the ground. At the beginning of the design, this car was only designed to achieve extremely high speed through stable high-speed propulsion. Coupled with the classic engine, the first generation of the GTR was almost invincible on the track. But later, especially in recent years, with the advancement of technology, modifications became more and more popular. After the GTR series was skillfully trained, it could be regarded as a drifting car suitable for mountain road racing. Chen Guang's car modification ideas were the result of Wang Qing's painstaking work, and after Jie's careful training and meticulous configuration, it was even more outstanding. However, the classic body stability system and four-wheel drive system on the GTR series were not completely removed. Most of the time, they were turned off for more stable drifting. But just now, when it was clear that it was impossible to overtake the car from the outside line, Chen Guang had switched the drive mode 3 times in a short period of time. Front drive. Rear drive. And finally, the four-wheel drive that stabilized the car. The front drive forcibly pulled the front of the car into the inside line. The rear drive briefly adjusted the car body. After the four-wheel drive stabilized the car body, it grabbed the ground and turned the corner. The matte GTR turned into a silent bolt of lightning, fast and terrifying. This was a victory for Chen Guang's precise operation, and at the same time, it was also Wang Qing's great achievement in the field of car modification, and it was also a result of Jie's golden wrench. Chen Guang had perfect control of the time lag when switching between drive modes. Instead, he had turned this lag into his own driving force. For ordinary people, this kind of rapid mode switching was no different from courting death. Machines were not gods. The four-wheel drive and front drive system that had been switched in a hurry couldn't perfectly control the car that was crazily charging through corners under the control of a computer program. However, even the short drift when the car lost control was also under Chen Guang's control. With Chen Guang's continuous micro-adjustments by tapping on the brakes with the tip of his foot, everything was under control. The so-called loss of control had instead made up for the last bit of turning range that he had deliberately left behind. That was why his cornering looked so strange and smooth. But if the camera was slowed down 100 times, it would be discovered that he was actually drifting intermittently every second. Chapter 246. After exiting the corner, Chen Guang pounced on the car in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Lunatic, this terrifying lunatic is here again. Who could stop him? The racer in front was also at a loss. The GTR behind him was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey, but he really didn't know what to do. Should he cut to the outside to defend against his strange drifting without slowing down, or cut to the inside to defend against his even stranger running style? Also, aren't you tired after overtaking 2 cars in a row? Aren't you nervous? Aren't you afraid that one mistake will cause your death? It was a pity that Chen Guang couldn't answer him. Otherwise, with Chen Guang's warm heart, he would definitely be more than happy to answer his questions. No, I'm not nervous. I'm really not nervous. I can't make a mistake. I've already made all the mistakes I could in the racing god training ground, and I've died many times. In the end, this hesitant guy chose to enter the corner at 110 km per hour, taking the center line. Then, Chen Guang decisively took the corner at 130 km per hour from the outside, teaching him how to be a grown-up. The result of taking the center line was, of course, that he couldn't take either side. Now, the person in front of Chen Guang was Ah Yuan, who had finally overtaken another car to take 4th place. Ah Yuan was feeling unwell. He'd had such a smooth start, and he'd finally taken 4th place with only a fifth of the race left. He'd thought that his journey would be a sea of stars. How did that guy mysteriously catch up from behind? How did he do it? His speed when exiting the corner was clearly at least 20 km per hour faster than him. He didn't need to accelerate too much to close the distance between them. How could he always take the corners at 130 km per hour? That's a lot less time than us. That's bullying. Did the 3 people behind me grow up eating sh*t? Can you guys be any worse? Ah Yuan cursed the others into sh*t, but he himself wasn't any better. He barely managed to take one more corner than the 3 people who had been overtaken. At the 5th of the 7 consecutive corners, he obediently gave up. The 6th corner. Another car overtook. The 7th corner. Another car overtook them. The last brother managed to maintain his position as the leader all the way to the Z-turn, but he was decisively killed by Chen Guang, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. When he returned to 1st place once again, all the parking lots on the huge mountain racetrack were silent. Many people speculated that this round of the competition would be the greatest test for this GTR. It might struggle under the concerted efforts of others to intercept it. They might not be able to push him out of the top 4, but they could at least make him lose the championship. What was the result? This guy had only used less than a third of the track to overtake 7 cars in a row and take back the 1st place. This wasn't racing, it was an adult bullying a child. In the short 1.5 minutes of Chen Guang's crazy overtaking, Mr. X's mouth had not stopped talking from the beginning to the end. He had completely turned into a machine gun, but he still could not quite keep up with Chen Guang's overtaking speed. Seeing that he had finally taken back the 1st place, Mr. X heaved a sigh of relief. I can finally rest for a while. Now I'm afraid there's only one suspense left, right? Can he still break his own record from yesterday? Can he be higher than the record set by Mr. Wu Pan and Mr. Takahashi last night? The suspense of this question did not even last more than a minute. When Chen Guang had run past the halfway mark, the number displayed on the timer told everyone a ruthless truth. Yesterday's record was not a record at all. Unless he crashed or flew out in the second half of the track, otherwise it would be broken without a doubt. When Chen Guang really finished running at an average speed of 151 km per hour and once again disappeared into the night sky, everyone's jaws dropped and they were speechless. He broke through 150 km per hour. Did he mean that he did not go all out for the past 2 days? Was he just playing? Mr. X was a little weak. He was almost shouting himself hoarse today. In the end, he realized that most of his strength was used in the wrong place. I gave you my voice for overtaking 7 cars in a row, and you turn around and tell me that you're going to break 150 kilometers per hour today. What a scam. He had commentated hundreds of official racing competitions and more than 10 underground racing competitions, but he had never shouted himself hoarse. He only felt extremely awkward. Wupan Junyao and Takahashi Ryo didn't look too good either. After yesterday's competition, the two of them had thought that although the Mat GTR was also very powerful, it was at most an opponent of the same level. In fact, although the competition between the two of them last night looked particularly intense, it did not seriously affect their respective absolute speeds. On the contrary, with a well-matched competitor, it actually helped each other, and everyone performed well. After running at an average speed of 146.45 kilometers per hour last night, although the two of them looked calm and collected, they were secretly feeling good. If they were to really run again without any interference, they might not be much faster than this standard. It was impossible for them to break the natural barrier of 150 kilometers per hour so easily. After Ah Yuan and the other racers who were in the same group arrived one after another, they stared at the giant screen in a daze, unable to speak for a long time. The other 8 racers who hadn't started their second race didn't even have the courage to race anymore. Many years ago, people had fantasized about whether someone could break the unsurpassable record of 140 kilometers per hour on the mid-mountain racetrack. Yesterday, 140 kilometers per hour had been broken. It was a historic moment. It announced the arrival of a new era on the mid-mountain racetrack, and even the global underground racing world. Some people attributed this great progress to the improvement of the racers' skills, but more people attributed the credit to the technological innovation of the cars. Many people even secretly speculated that the next threshold of 150 kilometers per hour might be like this times 140 kilometers per hour, and that it would take a few years to break. But in the end, it had only been a day. The car was still the same car, but the record had been broken by a whole new era. What was this? Was it a slap in the face? Did this mean that this person's driving skills had surpassed the bottleneck of science and technology? Ah Jia was laughing so hard that he looked like an idiot. He just chuckled, then looked back at Lu Fei, and kept chuckling. Lu Fei was embarrassed by his gaze and kicked him. What are you doing? Ah Jia chuckled again and pointed at his face. Sister Lu Fei, my car and brother Racing God's car have passed 150 kilometers per hour. I'm going to leave my name in history. I'm so happy. Lu Fei chuckled. In fact, she was quite surprised, but after interacting with Chen Guang more, she gradually adapted to Chen Guang's invincible state in the car. After thinking about it, she decided to give Ah Jia an even bigger surprise. Do you know about Wang Qing's GTR in Wujing? Lu Fei asked. Ah Jia came back to his senses and waved his hand disdainfully. I know. I think it was made by a small team in Wujing. It's not on the same level as my car. Then, let me tell you something. He used that car to run an average speed of 150 kilometers per hour on the Fengquan Mountain racetrack. That was probably his first day on the Fengquan Mountain racetrack. Strictly speaking, it was his first day in contact with a super sports car. Lu Fei said with a smile. Ah Jia's mouth opened wider and wider. He had been to Wujing City and had run the Fengquan Mountain racetrack with Wang Qing. Of course, he knew that the difficulty of that track was not inferior to the Banshan racetrack at all. Perhaps it was even more difficult. You're saying that he used that 650 horsepower weak chicken to run 150 kilometers per hour on the first day? Ah Jia asked in disbelief. Lu Fei nodded. That's right, that's it. Suddenly encountering the right steering wheel affected him. Until today, he probably hasn't fully adapted to it. Last night, he told me that his left shoulder was quite sore. Looking at Aujie's scared silly look, Lu Fei felt an indescribable sourness in her heart. The feeling of borrowing Chen Guang's prestige to brag in front of a country bumpkin like Aujie was pretty good. Lu Fei looked up again and saw the Lamborghini Aventador that had fallen into the last 4 places. She felt even more comfortable. Today was still a fruitful day. Chapter 247. Lu Fei really wanted to see the look on Chen Guang's face when he found out that he actually finished 151. Maybe he would be a little happy, and then he would pat himself on the shoulder and compliment him. First of all, I have to thank you, an excellent beautiful agent, for my achievements today. Lu Fei stood in the crowd and watched the second group of racers slowly enter the queue. These people almost lost the courage to race. Lu Fei was even more proud. She was so fantasizing that the corners of her mouth were about to blossom. That's right, the reason why he can run so smoothly is because I've put in so much effort to be at his beck and call for him. I've also contributed a lot to this. Being able to make history with him, it was worth it to throw away all the work in the company and come here with him. Speaking of which, there was probably a lot of backlog of documents waiting to be dealt with in the past 3 days. I'll go through them tomorrow. If there was really something important, the vice president would always call me. Lu Fei happily waited for Chen Guang's call. She was ready to tell him the new record he had created in an exaggerated tone. She had practiced it at least 10 times in her mind. In the end, he waited for nearly an hour before Chen Guang's call finally came. What? You're already back at the hotel? Lu Fei was so angry that she almost smashed her phone. This guy is getting more and more outrageous. After he met up with the SUV that was waiting for him, he directly threw the GTR to the people arranged by Uncle Qing. He directly drove the SUV back to the hotel. What this guy meant was that he was completely letting others do the work. I'm a person who is worth hundreds of thousands of yuan per minute. I accompanied you from thousands of miles away just to race with you. I wanted to leave my name in the history books with you. In the end, you left a delicate beauty like me to stay on the mountain track to help you pick out the car. You went back to the hotel by yourself. This is outrageous. When Chen Guang heard that Lu Fei was actually angry, he quickly laughed. It's not my fault. You know that I'm a student. My studies are the most important. Physics and chemistry is really hard to learn. If I don't seize the time to make up for it, I'll have to kneel on the ground during the makeup exam. Let me tell you, the failure rate of this course is as high as 40%. The retake rate is also as high as 20%. It's practically hell mode for us science students. Hearing him speak so seriously, Lu Fei really couldn't continue to criticize him. However, she was a little speechless. She said angrily, "You're the racing god of this generation. Can't you be a little more promising?" It was nothing more than failing a course. What are you afraid of? Chen Guang panicked and said, "Please don't say that. You don't know that I failed 3 subjects in my freshman year. When I went home, I was almost beaten to death. My parents' mixed doubles was so scary that I couldn't bear to look back on it. Oh, my mother was also in good health at that time." Just like that, Lu Fei hung up the phone gloomily. The god of racing was actually a college student who was afraid of failing a course. This setting was simply ridiculous. Unfortunately, I couldn't refute him. Thinking about it carefully, Lu Fei was a little envious of Chen Guang. She envied that he could be beaten and scolded by his parents. No, why am I thinking about these useless things? Back to this scammer, he felt that the root of his problem was that he didn't pay enough attention to the car racing competition. Otherwise, how could the exam be more attractive than coming here to beat up the local tycoons and divide their wealth? He loves money so much. Let me think about it and go back to give him a big surprise. What? How much did you say I've earned so far? Can you say it again? Did I hear you correctly? Chen Guang's mouth was wide open. He looked at Lu Fei, who was asking for praise in front of him. He couldn't say a word for a long time. Just now, Lu Fei suddenly rushed into the bedroom with a loudspeaker in her hand. She loudly shouted beside his head. Let me tell you a piece of good news. The Lamborghini that you locked today is a limited edition. It's worth 10 million. Including the prize money, you've earned a total of 28,500,000 yuan. Ha ha ha. Are you happy? When you were seriously reading, I helped you earn so much money. How are you going to thank me? Then, Lu Fei turned her head and saw the window that Chen Guang didn't have time to minimize. That's right, it was the Dota 2 game interface. Well, he was actually just tired from reading the courseware just now. His hands were itchy, so he opened the app to watch the battle and get some refreshment. Then, he accidentally clicked on matchmaking, and even more so, he successfully queued in an instant. Then, he accidentally chose a sword saint, and in the end, he accidentally dealt 80 blows in 10 minutes. Oh, and his current kill count was 8/0/0. 8 kills, no assists. Pure natural human-headed dog, no additives. You bastard. You keep saying that you're reading, but you actually play games behind my back. And it's Dota. Our friendship has come to an end. From now on, we're no longer friends. Your 28,500,000 yuan will be my compensation for my mental damage. Goodbye. Lu Fei pretended to be furious and turned to walk out. Instantly, Chen Guang bounced up from his seat and roared, "Holy shit! 28,500,000 yuan. Lu Fei, wait. Wait." Chen Guang rushed forward and grabbed her shoulder. Lu Fei didn't even turn her head and waved her hand domineeringly. Don't call my name. Since the beginning of chaos, Luogo and Knife Pig have been irreconcilable enemies. The next time we meet, you and I will be enemies. Our eyes will burn with hatred. Take care of yourself. After spending about half an hour, Chen Guang calmed down the traumatized Lu Fei and signed a series of humiliating treaties, finally obtaining Lu Fei's forgiveness. Among them were things like LOL was 10 times more fun than Dota 2, LOL's character design was cuter, Dota 2's style was dark, and he would play a round of LOL with her tomorrow. Speaking of which, how did it suddenly become more than 28 million out of the blue? Didn't I only play 3 matches? After signing, Chen Guang finally had the chance to talk business with Lu Fei. Lu Fei laughed. The third round's prize is 2 million. Your prize is a total of 5 million. It's 5,100,000 yuan, thank you. F***ck off. The first day's Aston Martin, the price of a car that landed in China is around 3 million. The rich guy who has become your hardcore fan is also willing to spend money and invested a few million into the modifications. In the end, it runs like a pile of sh*t. I estimate this car to be worth around 5 million. The second car, well, normally, Tianzhao would not fall to the bottom 4 in the second round. He gave you a big gift. Now that his Viper is no longer on sale in China, it is very valuable as a collector's item. It's worth around 4 to 5 million. He invested more than 5 million in his modifications, so the car is worth 9 million. Today, ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. There is actually someone who can drive a Lamborghini LP 750 in the curve races, and he actually made it to the third round. And it's a limited edition. You have to thank him when you have the chance in the future. This car is worth 10 million. F***ck. Let the old man drink some water to calm down. Over the past few days, Chen Guang had been running around with his head down. He had even left the selection of vehicles to Lu Fei. In any case, he only allowed her to pick the expensive ones. As for the specific car, he only asked for a rough estimate. Today, after a rough calculation, he realized that he could not stay calm anymore. He counted with his fingers and gulped down a mouthful of water. He turned and stared at Lu Fei. You mean, I only ran for 3 days, and I became a standard multimillionaire? Lu Fei nodded. That's right. Ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. I remember some time ago when I told my dad that I earned 1.2 million. At that time, his eyes rolled back and he fainted from shock. Look, I'm so calm. In the face of 28,500,000 and 100 yuan, my expression did not change at all. Ha 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 ha. Chen Guang, what's wrong with you? Chen Guang, wake up. Old Master Guang collapsed on his back without a word. In 3 days, he went from being penniless, with his family in debt, his mother seriously ill, and a tragic, bankrupt second-generation rich man with a deficit of millions of yuan. He turned into a tycoon with nearly 30 million in assets. Old Master Guang could not stay calm at all. He would not have known if he had not calculated, but once he did, he was shocked. Fainting straight away was a form of self-protection for humans in the face of intense stimulation. Chen Guang's self-protection was very good. Chapter 248. After a long time, Chen Guang woke up, but he still couldn't calm down. Tell me, how am I going to spend so much money? Can I spend it all in my lifetime? Lu Fei only laughed. Of course you can. It won't even be enough to buy a Bugatti Veyron. Pfft, I'm not a country bumpkin like you. I can split a penny into 2 and spend it. Who would buy that kind of thing to squander money? I've been messing around with the Arena recently, and I haven't been willing to spend money on a big maintenance. I'll spend 2,000 on a comprehensive maintenance. With Lu Fei's interruption, the game completely collapsed. He couldn't even continue reading. After Lu Fei left, Chen Guang lay on the bed, tossing and turning, his mind full of thoughts. He used to be so eager to become a rich man, but one day, when a huge amount of wealth fell from the sky, he realized that all the psychological preparations he had made before were useless. His mind was filled with the terrifying figure of 28.5 million yuan. Apart from that, he could imagine that there was an even more terrifying amount of wealth waiting for him. There were still 4 days until the competition. By the time he got all 7 cars, Chen Guang couldn't imagine how terrifying his total wealth would be. Sigh, the old man is still inexperienced after all. Look at how calm Lu Fei is. She doesn't even bat an eyelid when faced with a matter of tens of millions. I still have a long way to go, and I still have a lot of experience to learn. However, the foundation of all of this is built on the foundation of continuous winning. No matter what, I can't fail. He gritted his teeth and got out of bed. He turned on the computer again, but this time, it wasn't to play games or read the courseware. Well, as a multimillionaire, shouldn't he first learn about politics and how to do business? An hour later, he decisively fell back on the bed and fell asleep. Before he fell asleep, he told himself that business was not something that could be learned just by surfing the internet. The next morning, it was already past 10 in the morning when he woke up. It was rare for her to sleep in. She tossed and turned until 2:00 in the morning before falling asleep. When he walked out of the bedroom, he saw Lu Fei taking out her laptop and fiddling with something on the screen. She crossed her legs, put her left hand to the side, and fiddled with the mouse with her right hand. Her expression was exceptionally focused as she dragged the mouse and tapped it from time to time. Chen Guang quietly moved closer and took a look. It was actually a document from Lu Fei Company. Holy shit! An opportunity. It was time to learn how billionaires did business. He didn't interrupt her and even forgot to remind her that her family's trade secrets had been leaked. Chen Guang silently stood behind her and looked at the documents displayed on the laptop. This seemed to be the office management system of her company. The contents of these documents were generally things reported by various departments. Lu Fei browsed through the documents very quickly. One by one, she quickly flipped through the documents on the screen. Then, she ticked off the approve or disapprove button below. There were also some reports. After Lu Fei read them line by line, she dragged them to another folder. This folder's title was also very simple: Read. Just like that, Chen Guang spent 2 hours looking at it. Finally, Lu Fei stretched and said to herself, "I've only been gone for 3 days and you've already left me with so many things. I'm exhausted. What use do I have you guys?" Ah. Then, she turned around and saw Chen Guang. She exclaimed, "What are you doing? You're so sneaky. You're scaring me to death." Chen Guang chuckled. "I accidentally saw your company's trade secrets. Don't kill me." Lu Fei spat. "How is this confidential? It's just some regular documents. How long have you been reading them?" Chen Guang put up 2 fingers. 2 hours. Then, his stomach growled. He hadn't had breakfast since he woke up in the morning. Lu Fei glared at him angrily again. "What? You want to learn how to do business so quickly? All right. Let's talk while we eat." Chen Guang decisively took on the job of receiving lunch from the waiter. He eagerly filled the table with all kinds of food. Then, he even more enthusiastically picked up a piece of cabbage and put it in Lu Fei's bowl. "You used your brain too much just now. Nourish yourself. Damn. You're too purposeful." Lu Fei was defeated by his eagerness. Chen Guang scratched his head awkwardly. "I'm just anxious. I'm going to be rich soon, but I'm still completely clueless about doing business. I can't just deposit money in the bank and earn interest, can I? I have to at least understand a little bit about how to use this money. I'm impressed. Let me put it this way. According to my current estimation, if you really win all 7 rounds, you will probably get a total of about 80 million yuan in the end. However, the best way to use these cars is to auction them on the spot. Then, you can hand them over to Uncle Ching to help you deal with them. The final amount of money you can get is around 70 million. Chen Guang nodded. He completely understood what Lu Fei said. That's right, it's 70 million. How do I spend it? I have no idea. 70 million is just a drop in the bucket. If you don't pretend, we can still be friends. Don't pretend. I have it. Can we get down to business? I saw you handling the documents just now. You really want to learn how to manage a business. I was really caught off guard when you suddenly got so much money. I saw you handling the documents just now. You're really decisive in handling the documents. I think there's a document about a subsidiary company applying for 50 million for technological transformation, right? How did you approve it in a blink of an eye? There's another document about purchasing some foreign equipment. The price is not cheap either. I think it's more than 70 million. You approved it too. Also, there's a job transfer, a project to develop a new product, and a derivative product. You handled all of these in a blink of an eye. That's too fast. How can you think of so many things in your head? Don't you feel dizzy? Why didn't I notice that you're so smart? Lu Fei, alright, I'll stop joking. I really admire you in this aspect. I think you're really good. Can you teach me? Chen Guang had always been a person who loved to learn. Lu Fei knocked his head with her chopsticks. If you learn from me, you'll lose everything in minutes. What do you mean? Am I that weak? Chapter 249. It's not that you're so weak, it's that you can't afford to play like me. Do you know, although I decided to come to Xiangjiang with you in a hurry, I have already delegated part of the authority before I left. The documents that are submitted to me are all decisions that can only be made by the highest level of the company. Before these documents were sent to me, do you know how many people have already gone through them? A company is a huge structure. This so-called brain is not just me, not to mention that I am only in charge of the subsidiary companies of the company. You see me making a simple decision, whether to approve or not. In fact, before this, many people have been racking their brains for the same thing. For example, the 50 million investment in technical transformation is a necessary requirement for the country to promote environmental protection in the new 2 years. Our previous production wastewater treatment level can't meet the new standards, and the need for technical transformation has reached an urgent level. It must be implemented as soon as possible, otherwise, we will have to stop production for rectification. We have already done a long negotiation in the early stage, and the small and medium tests of the scientific research unit have also passed the acceptance inspection, proving that this set of process plan is feasible, so of course, I directly approved it. Also, the 70 million purchase is because a new technology has just appeared abroad, which can greatly increase the output and quality of our products. If it is done well, it will increase the annual profit by hundreds of millions, so of course, I directly approved it. Lu Fei talked until the dishes on the table were completely cold. Chen Guang listened with a face full of admiration. He really didn't expect that this seemingly retarded big sister, okay, she is really his retarded fan, actually has so many things in her head. Although every decision had gone through layers of scrutiny before it reached her, as the so-called highest authority, she also knew the key links involved in every decision like the back of her hand. The most amazing thing is that she is very clear about the possible impact of every decision. Damn, doing business is so difficult, I'd better just take the interest. This was the conclusion that Chen Guang came to. Lu Fei knocked his head again. You're giving up just like that. Let me put it this way, you look like I know everything, but in fact, if you want to carry out the specific details, I don't know anything. For example, this product called Enchanting is the flagship product of one of my subsidiary companies, but in fact, I don't know how this thing is produced and how many links there are in the production process. I don't want to understand it either. Even if I occasionally ask and temporarily understand, I won't study it in detail. It's impossible for me to understand every detail like the production manager of this branch company. As a decision maker, it is very difficult to manage such a huge company. A person's energy is limited, so I can only let myself be in a situation where I know but don't know. I only need to control the situation that I should control. As for the rest, I will let others deal with it. If someone else messes up, I'll hold him accountable. If he can't bear the responsibility, I'll replace him with someone else and find someone who can bear the responsibility. It's as simple as that. So, doing business is really difficult, but it is also very simple. It is nothing more than to constantly make decisions. It is the same for people. Chen Guang was puzzled again. Then how do you know that your decisions will always be right? Of course, I can't always be right, but I can guarantee that there will always be more right decisions than wrong ones. Other than that, I still have a big company, right? If I make a mistake, there will always be a sober person who can remind me. If most of the decisions approved by the company's leaders are wrong, then I can only blame it on my bad luck. If there is a mistake, everyone will bear it together. But my family business is big, and a small mistake will not be enough. Because what I control is only a small part of a huge company. If this part is broken, I can still pull resources from other places to fix it. You can't do it. 70 million will be gone in a minute. Chen Guang vaguely understood what Lu Fei said. Actually, in my opinion, people who do business can be roughly divided into 3 types. The first is the kind of people like our parents, who rely purely on the accumulation of life experience to build a team step by step, and then use this team as the foundation to expand their business. These people, I would sum them up as experiential businessmen. The other type is like Tang Xiaokai, who relies on their extraordinary brains and courage to rush into the financial market. They have a wealth of theoretical knowledge, and even more so, they have the wisdom to work together. I call these types of people technical businessmen. Then which type are you? Chen Guang asked. Lu Fei laughed. I am the third type. Intuitive. After thinking about it, I think I'll just be the intuitive type. Pfft. Do you think my intuition comes so easily? I'm different from Zhong Bai and the others. I've been involved in business affairs since I was 16 years old in high school. Over the years, I've seen all kinds of people and encountered all kinds of things. Whether it's business negotiations, technical difficulties of the company, or even the coming and going of some old officials, I've seen a lot of them. Although I am only 25 years old, strictly speaking, I have been learning business for 9 years. That is why I dare to say that I am the intuitive type. Since last year, my family divided a branch company and let me be the head. Amazing! Chen Guang's face was full of admiration. But from last year to this year, my branch company has lost more than 500 million. Pfft! Chen Guang really wanted to strangle her. Damn, this woman's words are reasonable, but in the end, I still suffer losses. I feel like I am learning oil painting from a blind person and music from a deaf person. Well, although he was cursing Lu Fei in his heart, Chen Guang had to admit that what she said was reasonable. The knowledge of doing business was indeed like this. The human brain was not a computer, and business was a social knowledge. It was impossible to simply rely on some so-called mathematical formulas or economic principles to understand the mysteries of doing business. Otherwise, the richest people in the world would not be businessmen, but those mathematicians or economists who did research. Previously, he tried to learn business by reading books or reading biographies of rich people, but it was a bit stupid. An experienced businessman's idea of success, to put it bluntly, is the accumulation of life experience. When faced with one decision after another, always be able to make the more correct decision. This is easy to say, but difficult to do. As for a technical businessman like Tang Xiaokai, it is even more difficult than an experienced businessman. A technical businessman can be said to be the sublimation of an experienced businessman. On the basis of the experience brought by losses and setbacks, he also has the same rich theoretical knowledge. He can penetrate the surface to understand the essence of the market economy, which allows him to be like a fish in water in the US stock market and investment market. But to copy Tang Xiaokai's successful experience to China, he can teach him how to be an adult in a minute. For a so-called intuitive type like Lu Fei, it is even more profound. On the surface, she is cheating her father by losing 500 million a year. But in other words, to be able to maintain such a large company and only lose 500 million a year, she has actually exceeded the requirements of her family. She has the theoretical knowledge that young people are passionate about, and she also has the experience that an experienced businessman needs. In the future, she will follow the path that her family arranged for her, and walk on the throne of a strong woman in the business world. This is not difficult for her, because from the beginning to the end, there will be a team to assist her, and as she goes further, the team that assists her will become stronger and stronger, and the level will become higher and higher. This is an advantage that a rich second generation like her is born with, and it is not something that can be envied. But when Chen Guang put the same thinking in place of himself, it does not work at all. He is rich, but not rich enough, and he is not a real rich second generation. The most successful experience of his family in business is his father's hot pot restaurant, and that is all. Of course, after today's conversation, Chen Guang did not end up with nothing. At least, compared to many people, he has a too perfect and too easy start. 70 million in cash, that is something that many people can't even dream of in a few lifetimes. Instead of being fearful before he even made a move, he might as well try the thought process of an experiential businessman like what Lu Fei said. He would first find an opportunity for himself and create a platform where he could continuously make decisions. That way, he would be able to accumulate the experience he needed. In addition, perhaps he needs a team. The comprehensive wisdom of a team is always stronger than the thinking of an individual. Of course, a truly successful person, such as little brother Ma or brother Yun, their team is strong, but their individual decision-making ability is even more outstanding. A person with perfect decision-making ability and a similarly comprehensive team can truly become the person who drives the tide of the economy. Well, the old man has no chance in the short term, so I will take the interest first. How about I take out 100,000 yuan to open a lottery shop? Look, the opportunity to make a decision is coming. Should I open the lottery shop in the pedestrian street of the school, or in Wenqing town outside the school? Should I sell sports lottery or welfare lottery? After giving himself a hard slap, Chen Guang felt like a fool. Forget it, let's use the other method that Lu Fei mentioned at the end. What I need the most is an idiotic way to make money. Put the money in the venture capital market, and then spread the net like a fool, find a suitable company to invest in the venture capital market, split the 70 million into several or dozens of portions, and put them into different egg baskets. If one side fails, the other side can always make up for the loss. When I can't make up my mind when I invest, I can ask Lu Fei or Tang Xiaokai, these smart people who are more experienced than me. I can at least give them face, right? Because we're friends. Then, as long as the general direction of the investment keeps up with the trend, and let my money climb up along with the entire market, unless I am so unlucky that I can't even drink water and get wiped out, I can still make the appreciation of my assets outpace the bank interest. That is enough. Chen Guang looked at the heavenly holy grail in his hand regretfully again. Liuli has not done anything for a long time. How I wish I could let this godly artifact give me a shot that can turn me into a business superman in a second. You just have to win the money back. I guarantee that I'll give you 10 times the amount in a year. If not, I'll change your money back. Recently, I've been playing a lot of games. Whenever the opponent queues up against me, I'll instantly quit. It's getting a little boring. I'm looking for something else to do. Don't you dare deprive me of my fun. Anyway, you can't stop me, right? After Liuli said this, she went silent again. No matter how much Chen Guang called out to her in his mind, it was of no use. Chen Guang threw away the cup in disappointment. He silently calculated that he should transfer 4 million to Wang Qing first to pay off his debt. If he won the money tonight, he would transfer it all to his dad's account. He would first help his dad pay off part of the court's judgment. As for the battle to protect the car in the next few days, if he thought about it carefully, it wouldn't be a big deal if he didn't participate. With a sense of loss, he took an afternoon nap on his bed. After that, Chen Guang gave his father a call. Since he decided to transfer the money tonight, it was better to give him a heads up before he fainted again. After chatting with Chen Guli for a while, Chen Guang learned about the situation in Wujing City. After the donor arrived, with Tang Ying's help, she was quickly arranged into a hospital room. Now that a few days had passed, both Feng Rong and the donor's physical condition were under control. The time for the operation had been completely set, which was 9:00 in the morning 4 days later. In short, Dad, you don't have to worry about the money. Your son is no longer the same as before. Tonight, I will transfer a large sum of money over. When Mom is fully recovered, you can find a suitable time to pay off the money awarded by the court. It's not a good idea to keep owing it. Although there is something fishy about this case, we can't win. Even if I will find out the details of the case sooner or later, we should stop worrying about it now. Chen Guang said carefully, for fear of scaring Chen Guli. If it were another time, Chen Guang would have to fork out a few million to pay off the debt that he didn't want to acknowledge. There was no way. But now, first, it was too easy and enjoyable to make money in the past few days. Second, there was the completely deceptive Emperor of the Azure who was eyeing the large sum of money. Just like what she said, if this woman really wanted to do something, there was no way to prevent it. Based on the principle that it was better to fill the hole first than to throw away the money. After paying off the debt, at least there was a bubble. Sigh, Xiao Guang, don't say any more. I understand. It's been hard on you. Oh right, how was the effect of the soup last time? Recently, I asked your uncle about an even more powerful prescription in his hometown. You're still young. Bam! Chen Guang decisively hung up the phone. Jiang Yage was too much of a scapegoat. He didn't know what kind of terrifying human-shaped juicer his dad would imagine a beautiful young celebrity to be. Now that he thought about it, he transferred 1.2 million yuan to him last time, and he came up with a vitality recovery soup. This time, he was going to transfer 4 million yuan to him. Could he come up with a vitality recovery soup that was 4 times more powerful? Would I still be able to live after eating it? Would it be too much of a supplement? Should I stick to rubbing it every day from tonight onwards and use up some of my vitality in advance? So conflicted, so painful, so flustered. Should I secretly change to a sock puppet and apologize under Jiang Yage's Weibo? He felt a little apologetic in his heart. This complicated and uneasy feeling lasted until that night, when Chen Guang sat in his car and prepared for the final round of the race. After 4 consecutive days of competition, those who were able to stand out from the 64 cars and become one of the top 8 were undoubtedly the best of the best in this year's race, whether it was the level of the driver or the performance of the car. Among them were the previous champion, Ah Yuan, and the McLaren P1, which had an eye-catching performance in the first round, almost catching up to Chen Guang's record. In the second round, the Subaru Winged Leopard WRXD, who had watched from the sidelines against Chen Guang and He Tianzhao, also performed well. It successfully passed the first round and became one of the finalists. Other than Chen Guang, there was another GTR in the final round. This car was different from Chen Guang's. It was said that it had been shipped from Japan by sea a long time ago, and the entire car was made of pure black technology. Of course, the car participating in this race was not the ordinary version that could be bought on the market, but the real cutting-edge technology of the original manufacturer. In addition, the driver was from the same school as Ryoichi Takahashi, and was considered Ryoichi Takahashi's nephew. The other 3 cars were BMW M4, Renault Alpine, and Corvette C7Z06. Among them, the driver of the BMW M4 was a driver who had just switched from professional rallying to participate in underground racing. The car was configured according to his years of racing experience, and he had invited several engineers from the rallying team to help modify and debug the car. Although his car was not expensive, his ability was not to be underestimated. The Renault Alpine was even more impressive. It was a top driver hired by this company to participate in this race to build momentum for their upcoming new concept car. As for the other Corvette C7Z06, it was equipped with a supercharged CR1 series engine, and added a lot of violent modifications. Coupled with an ultra-lightweight body that was also expensive to build, the real combat power of this car far exceeded its price, and it became a real killer on the mountain roads. Looking at Chen Guang being pushed down to number 8 in the ranking, just like in the previous round, Lu Fei frowned. Yesterday's opponents had already targeted him. Today, at the final stage, if he won again, it would really be a battle to protect the car. He was afraid that the resistance he would face today would be even greater than yesterday. Once it was a battle to protect the car, the other car kings who participated in the race would have their own pride and dignity, and would certainly not join forces to target him. With his skills that surpassed the limits of human beings, his race might actually become easier. So, today was his biggest challenge. Chapter 251. At this stage of the race, it was completely different from the previous 3 rounds. From the beginning, everyone's eyes were focused on Chen Guang. Who could stop him from dominating this racetrack would be the only suspense tonight. Wupon Junyao and Takahashi Ryo were surrounded by a few more people. Ferdinand, the king of the rising sun from London, Fallant, the son of sound from Detroit, Speed, the king of rainforest from Brazil, and Felix, the king of diamonds from Africa. This year's race was only halfway through, and 5 of the world's top 10 car kings had already arrived. Among them, Sonic Shack chose to retire from the world because of his old age and stayed in Detroit to manage his modification factory, but for the first time, he pushed his son, Farent, to the front stage. At least in the eyes of other acquaintances, although Farent was not as calm as Shack, his style and drive were better than his father's. Lu Fei looked at the car kings gathered together from afar, her heart filled with excitement. But she no longer looked up to these people. Instead, she was proud in her heart. The purpose of you coming here is to defeat Lu Fei's master, Chen Guang. This was basically the rhythm of Chen Guang and Lu Fei. When it had nothing to do with racing, Chen Guang's every move was telling Lu Fei that her brother was a loser, constantly refreshing his image in her heart. But once it was involved with racing, Chen Guang's pitiful and fragmented personal image could be restored in Lu Fei's heart in an instant. Moreover, it was constantly elevated by her to the level of a god that could only be looked up to but not approached. It was not only Lu Fei who was so concerned about the existence of these car kings. Even Mr. X on the commentary platform had similarly led the topic to these car kings. This year's racing race was destined to be extraordinary. Yesterday's Yuan ultimately failed to reach the top 3 before reaching the finish line, but rather awkwardly fell to 4th place in his group. But this was not necessarily bad news. At least today, he was very happy to be assigned number 1, neatly lining up at the front of the starting line. After experiencing yesterday's fiasco, Yuan had learned from the painful experience. Today, he had completely abandoned all the chaotic thoughts in his mind from the beginning. He just stared at the front with full concentration, his mind empty. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was, I have to be faster. Faster than the limit. They had to go all out and maintain the advantage they had at the beginning of the ranking until the last second. Even if he fell halfway, he would not easily admit defeat. Since he was ranked first from the very beginning due to his advantage in ranking, then he should not disappoint this ranking. He should run a good race to his heart's content. Regardless of the outcome, he would not have any regrets. Even if he might become the foil of the GTR's legend, he would not be a withered and dull leaf. At least, he would be a bright emerald leaf. There were many people who shared the same mentality as Ah Yuan. Before yesterday, there were still people who tried to compete with this mysterious GTR in terms of speed. However, after seeing the data of the GTR yesterday, anyone with a normal brain could clearly understand one thing. What they needed to face was an ultimate big boss that was even more of a king of cars than the king of cars. Will he be able to leave everyone in the dust today and restart the Xiangjiang racing car racing competition after 4 years? As the start of the competition approached, the same question appeared in everyone's mind, including the racing king. In Gokyo University, thousands of kilometers away, in Zhuo Jingxi's office, a large group of people were gathered in front of Zhuo Jingxi's computer. In the end, Sun Xiaoxuan couldn't hold himself back from whispering about Qin Guang's car racing incident. Although this matter wasn't completely spread throughout the class, Qin Guang's 3 grandsons, as well as the counselor, Zhuo Jingxi, all knew about it. No one knew where Lin Jingwei had found the channel, but he had actually used a very internal method to completely synchronize the live broadcast of Mr. X's commentary that had originally only appeared on the mid-mountain racetrack to Zhuo Jingxi's computer. At this time, the 3 grandsons of Lin Jingwei, Sun Xiaoxuan, Gao Ye, and Zhuo Jingxi were all gathered in front of the computer. Their eyes were wide open and their fists were tightly clenched as they stared at the matte GTR waiting quietly at the back of the traffic. Because Qin Guang was wearing the flexible V-shaped mask of the Secret Service, the organizing committee was not worried that it would ruin his idea of hiding his identity. They simply found an unmanned helicopter with a high-definition camera to fly around the GTR and capture every detail of Qin Guang's car and the people inside. If others saw Qin Guang's expression at this time, they might think he was mysterious and domineering, but Lin Jingwei and the others who were familiar with Qin Guang's personality knew that his state was completely different from the real him. I've never seen Brother Guang look like this. He looks like he's going to eat someone. Bai Fan hit the nail on the head. Sun Xiaoxuan clenched her fists tightly. She was extremely nervous. Why isn't he wearing a safety helmet? I've seen car racing on TV with safety helmets. Lin Jingwei shook his head. This is different. This is an unofficial underground racing competition. The people who participate in this kind of competition are all crazy. Although wearing a helmet can slightly increase the safety factor, it will affect the vision and reduce the overall performance of the driver. I really didn't expect Brother Guang to have such terrifying driving skills after racing for a year and a half. Bai Nyangzi, you're right. With his results so far, he is indeed going to eat someone. After saying this, Lin Jingwei, who knew a little about the inside story, explained the rules of the racing competition in detail to everyone. So, almost everyone is Qin Guang's enemy now. Zhuo Jingxi, the counselor, finally couldn't hold it in. At this moment, she was no longer a counselor. She was just a girl who was worried about Qin Guang's safety, just like everyone else. Lin Jingwei nodded. That's right. He's the enemy of the world. If he can keep winning, he will definitely walk on the altar and become a legend. That's crazy. Xiong was shocked. Lin Jingwei nodded. It's that crazy. I can't explain it clearly to you. I can only tell you that up until now, the dominance he has shown in this underground racing competition is more like a main character in a movie or anime. He's a monster. Other than earning tens of millions of yuan, he will also establish a godlike status in the industry. He's indeed Brother Guang. From the first day I met him, I knew he wasn't simple. Otherwise, who could make Lin Jingwei call him boss? Get lost. You make it sound like you're some big shot. Gaoya stomped hard on Lin Jingwei's foot and said angrily, "You're getting cocky." Lin Jingwei howled in pain, but he looked like he was enjoying it. This guy was sincere about Gaoya. No wonder I think this guy looks so handsome with his mask on. He's so handsome. I'm a tiger by Mu Donjiang, and I'm almost mesmerized by him. He's so mesmerizing. On the other side, Xiong was so scared that he started speaking in northeastern dialect. He stared at the computer screen, his eyes shining. Everyone turned their heads to look at him. They were disgusted by the words that came out of this burly man's mouth. If the match hadn't finally started on the screen, the solemn atmosphere that everyone had gathered with great difficulty would have been blown away by him. As the originally stilled traffic began to move, Chen Guang's eyes narrowed. His murderous aura seemed to pass through the screen and hit everyone in the face. The current Chen Guang had become a stranger to those who were familiar with him. This was the first time the crowd had seen Chen Guang in a racing car. He was completely different from his usual self. After listening to Lin Jingwei's explanation, the crowd knew that this was the golden age of the global underground racing world, and also Chen Guang's personal battlefield. He used his eyes to tell the crowd that this time, he was racing with the determination to succeed or die trying. He was like a peerless warrior who wanted to take the head of the enemy's general from among thousands of soldiers and horses. He would either become a god or fall to hell forever. Chapter 252. The race has begun. Yuan didn't disappoint. He pulled the power to the maximum in an instant. He didn't let down his first-place ranking. His start was smooth but fast. The McLaren P1 worth tens of millions has maximized the advantage of hybrid power. Using the super-strong current to pull the speed to the maximum in an instant. His start is shockingly fast. Today's protagonist, the invincible god of war who always wears a mask, was full of aggression from the start. He gave the BMW M4 in front of him a lot of pressure. This guy seems to have only shown his true form today. He's about to enter the first turn. Everyone pulled inwards one after another, preparing to slow down for the turn. The data analysis results are out. Today, the average speed of the 8 cars has surpassed the 3 cars in front. It's catching up to the speed of the Dark Knight Temptress and the Inferno God of War the day before yesterday. Mr. X was giving his commentary like a machine gun. The scene was so intense from the start that it was heart-wrenching. Sister Lu Fei, is Brother Racing God in a bad mood today? Jia suddenly turned his head and asked Lu Fei beside him. Lu Fei shook her head. He's not in a bad mood. He just doesn't want to lose. The organizing committee kept putting him last without saying anything. Maybe he's a little unhappy. He won't lose, right? I feel like his opponent is very strong too. Jia asked again. His heart wasn't very determined. Lu Fei shook her head, but her expression was unprecedentedly firm. He won't lose. When he's serious, he's invincible. The stronger his opponent, the stronger he will be. The him I know has no upper limit. At that moment, Mr. X suddenly screamed. Because when he was about to cut into the first turn, Chen Guang, who had been at the back since the start, pulled to the outside line. Turning speed of 160. 160. What the hell? If I don't crash, I'll eat sh*t live. Mr. X finally couldn't help but curse. Then, he was slapped in the face. The Renault Alpine was overtaken. There was no way to fight back. Like a black meteor, Chen Guang chose to overtake on the outside line right from the start of the race under everyone's watchful eyes. Then, he would continue to overtake other cars along the right side of the sideline. He would exit the corner faster than the others and continue to press forward. he would immediately force the next Corvette C7Z06. Everyone in the audience hoped for a slow-motion replay because they really could not understand what had just happened. They could not understand how someone could pass through that bend at 160 kilometers per hour. This was completely inconsistent with the common sense of physics in everyone's minds. Sister Lu Fei, I don't understand. I personally modified this car piece by piece, so I know better than anyone else how capable it is. But why is it like this? Ah, Jiao looked confused. Lu Fei also shook his head. He recalled the psychological trauma Qin Guang had given everyone when he first used Wang Qing's GTR to reach 150 on Fenghuan Mountain a long time ago. At that time, everyone felt the same way. They couldn't understand how he did it. Perhaps, up until now, that guy had never been serious about driving. It was a pity that Qin Guang's advance was too fast and too fierce. He did not give the data analysis team the slightest time or opportunity to prepare. In the blink of an eye, he was already behind the Corvette, like a ferocious beast that was about to devour someone. The skills of God were never easily understood by mortals. Knowing how much trauma his actions would cause to others, Qin Guang only laughed. In fact, he had another skill. In less than 5 seconds, he sharpened the tip of a pencil into a lifelike rose. That was much more difficult than a 160 km per hour turn. You bunch of ignorant mortals. If I let you know that I once drove an Alto to 400 km per hour on a similar track, would your hearts explode and you die? Just as Lu Fei had guessed, Qin Guang had never really been serious, even when he was running the Fenghuan mountain track. Since today was about whether or not he could start the second round of the race, then he would really go crazy for once. An invisible momentum slowly rose from the madly sprinting Matt GTR. Even through the huge screen, everyone seemed to be able to feel his murderous intent. Before this, he was a man who was close to God, but today, he was going to become a real god. There were many people who could drive, but only 1 in 10,000 could race. It was not difficult to drive the car steadily and safely along the road to the destination. But to drive the car to the limit of one's psychology and physiology, to cross the longest route in the shortest time, and to be the first to cross the finish line in the fierce competition, was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than normal safe driving. The drivers who could compete with Qin Guang today were already the best of the best. Ordinary people would have to control the car's speed to less than 80 km per hour, but they could cross the intense corners at 110 or even 115 km per hour. Among them, the lowest level was still better than Wang Qing from Wujing City. But the difference between Qin Guang and them was complete. People of different realms had different limits. The limit of others was 115 km per hour, which was enough to make them feel like their car was on the verge of completely losing control. But for Qin Guang, from the beginning, his limit was not at this level. What could limit him was not his personal limit, but the sudden change of the steering wheel with his right hand, as well as the stability of the car itself. During the high-speed sprint, if someone sat in the passenger seat of Qin Guang, they would find that the movements of his hands and feet were extremely fast. Chapter 253. Now, there were only 4 cars left in front of Qin Guang. At the very front was Ah Yuan's Volkswagen. He had performed well today, maintaining first place. Even though his lead over the cars behind him was minuscule, he had protected the local racer's pride. In second place was the expensive McLaren P1, which was a complex of black technology with superior power. Up until now, this car was still the most technologically advanced car in the competition. Apart from that, its driver was also very smart. Unlike Ah Yuan, who had unwillingly fallen to 4th place in the previous round. This guy had deliberately controlled his ranking to 3rd place in the previous round. This was to obtain a position in the 2nd row this round, which would allow him to suppress the Matt GTR. Apart from these two, there was a Subaru Leopard WRXD and a BMW M4 respectively. Just as everyone was looking forward to how the Matt GTR would slaughter the two cars in front, a sudden change occurred, causing an uproar. The Subaru and BMW actually slowed down their acceleration, and instead adjusted their parking spots, driving side by side. Were they brazenly teaming up to suppress the invincible GTR? This kind of behavior was enough to disqualify or even be banned in a regular competition. But in a gambling competition, there were no written rules about this. This was an underground drag race where both parties wore protective suits and wielded fancy rapiers. Furthermore, they had to compete on a rectangular platform where both parties had to fight back and forth with each other while wearing protective suits and wielding fancy rapiers. Although these two's behavior was shameful, if they couldn't even deal with this kind of situation, how could they become the underground kings worshipped by the unruly racers? 4 years ago, on the same track, facing the same situation, Diesel had chosen to explode on the accelerator, turning his Ford GT, which had been completely transformed into a heavy cannon, into a meteorite, crashing into the two rascals in front of him. He had used his American-style violent philosophy to maximize the power of the muscle car, sweeping away the two overconfident stumbling blocks on his road to becoming the king of cars. So what would the Matt GTR do today? F*CK. B*TCH. Chen Guang was pushed back by the two bastards and tried to pull the inside lane. The two cars decisively cut to the inside lane and pulled towards the outside lane. In the end, the two bastards did not even care about their pride. They would rather lose straight-line speed and pull to the right side. In this kind of two-lane race, it was already very troublesome to have a car in front of them blocking them from overtaking them. With two cars blocking their way, it was simply a trap. Chen Guang changed direction several times, but he was blocked by the two grandsons. Chen Guang was infuriated. "Did you two bitches take my money?" He had not guessed wrongly. The two of them had indeed received money. The driver, who had locked his car yesterday, promised the two of them that if they could work together to push GTR out of the top 4, he would give them 2 million each. Apart from that, the two of them also knew that they would definitely be defeated by this invincible GTR if they were to compete based on pure strength. Instead of that, they might as well use this dishonest method to force him out of the top 4. This way, they would be able to keep their place in the top 4 and get a share of the prize money. They would also be able to get cash from the driver. Why not? Perhaps some people would think that the battle to protect the car had not even begun. Chen Guang wanted to break through the heavy encirclement of the king of cars and successfully win for 7 days in a row. However, to the driver, who had a temper and character, "If you make me unhappy, I don't lack money. I can also protect my car so that you won't even be able to enter the battle to protect the car. Bullying a big shot who can't run a corner race. I'll throw money at you." In a regular race, taking money and breaking the rules would, of course, be condemned by everyone and banned from the race. But I'm sorry, this is the racing heaven of the underground world. We only have one rule: the winner takes all. Even if the racers in the BMW M4 and Subaru Leopard WRXD were beaten to death by the kings of cars who had come all the way here to protect the car, it would not change the fact that the GTR had lost its chance to become the king of cars. Then, faced with such a situation, what could the driver of the Matt GTR do? His GTR was not as violent as the Ford GT. It could not be like Diesel, who could forcefully smash through the obstacles on both sides. It was not just the ordinary audience that thought this way. Lu Fei was not any better. Even the kings of cars who had gathered together could not think of how the mad GTR could break through this situation. Under the lens of the helicopter, the three cars were almost squeezed together. Although the absolute speed of the three cars did not slow down much, Yuan's Volkswagen and the other McLaren P1, which were running at the very front, still took advantage of the situation and accepted the gifts from the Subaru and BMW. If Qin Guang could not break through the blockade of the two thieves in front, the gap between him and the carefree Volkswagen and McLaren would only continue to widen. "I'm very familiar with this scene," Silver Sparrow sighing. A deep and hoarse voice suddenly sounded from behind the kings of cars. Everyone turned to look, only to see a sturdy bald man with a smile on his face slowly walking over. Ferret moved the fastest. He turned around and walked in the direction of the bald man with a smile. "Uncle Diesel, you're finally here." Diesel extended his fist and hammered Ferret's chest. "Why, your father is not coming." Ferret nodded. "He's not coming. From now on, I will inherit the name of Sonic Shack and continue to be famous throughout the world." Diesel only patted his head. "Kid, the king of cars doesn't recognize who your father is. What you want, you have to rely on yourself to fight for it." Ferret's face turned red, a hint of unwillingness flashing in his eyes. However, he did not dare to argue with Diesel, and could only obediently stand behind Diesel. The others also greeted Dominic Diesel, who had arrived late, with unconcealable fear in their eyes. Diesel also nodded to the crowd, and immediately stood in the middle of the crowd, continuing to look up at the huge screen. On the screen, the mad GTR that had created a legend a few days ago was still being suppressed. He seemed to be at his wit's end. Being suppressed like this, even Brother Racing God can't do anything, right? Jia said worriedly. Lu Fei did not reply. Although she felt the same way, another thought kept popping up in her mind. In this world, absolutely no one could block his path forward. What would you do? Just as Lu Fei asked silently in her heart, Chen Guang suddenly gave her an answer. This answer came so suddenly, without any warning. Chen Guang's GTR flew. Chapter 254. Why was he flying? What was he trying to do? Was he courting death? He was flying out of the track. A huge question mark floated in everyone's mind. Chen Guang's car was flying in the air. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment, and everyone's mind went blank. Slowing down time by 10 times, one could see Lu Fei's mouth open wider and wider, and her pupils gradually constricted. The 6 great car kings and the Sonic Sun, who had been watching the huge screen calmly, also opened their mouths at the same time. In the distant crowd, there was a sudden cry of shock. This mountain track was built along the mountain. On one side was a mountain, and on the other was a cliff. Flying out of the track meant falling off the cliff. If you were lucky, you might survive, but the probability of dying was much higher than surviving. Mr. X's short and hurried cry of shock came from the loudspeaker. Oh my God! Time was still slowing down. Under the night sky, under the lights, Chen Guang's mad GTR was flying in the air. The wheels were still spinning crazily, and the thick exhaust pipe was spewing exhaust crazily, as though it was pulling out a rainbow in the air. In the car, Chen Guang had a cold smile on his face. You think you can stop me with 2 cars? You're looking down on me, aren't you? I've been waiting for this chance, this V-turn. The mountain track rose and fell along the mountain, generally following the course of going up and then down the mountain. But there were also some steep slopes in the middle of the track. Among them, this V-turn was the most thrilling. On one side, there was a sharp turn, and at the same time, there was a sharp rise and fall of the slope, like a twisted arch bridge. Even if you slowed down to drive past here, there would be a very obvious sense of weightlessness. And the peak of the steep slope happened to be the sharpest corner of the V-turn. Normally, when driving past here, you had to control the speed at least 70 km per hour to pass safely. Otherwise, a moment of carelessness would cause the car to fly up and crash into the mountain wall at the sharp V-turn. A car flying in the air could not be controlled, no matter how good the driver was. But Qin Guang did not slow down. Instead, just before entering the curve, he pulled the car hard into the inner lane, the tires almost pressing against the edge of the drainage ditch. Then, he turned around, diagonally to the other side, and along the slope of the V-turn, he suddenly sped up. The slope was too steep. It was at least 30 degrees. Qin Guang rushed out from the tangent of the slope at 160 km per hour. The car was far from the ground, and it crossed the guardrail diagonally. The whole car was floating in midair. You want to stop me? I'll fly over now. Let's see how you're going to stop them. The GTR flew farther and higher in the air, and when it finally reached the apex, the GTR was already flying. Finally, someone reacted and saw through his intentions. They were even more astonished. What a complete lunatic. Aren't you afraid of death? Are you really not afraid of death? How do you know that you can rush out fast enough? How do you know that this slope is enough for you to fly diagonally to the other side of the bend? Could it be that when you made this decision, you already calculated the result? If Qin Guang knew the doubts in these people's hearts, he would only chuckle and tell them the truth. Forget it. What the F***ck? I'm not a human computer. I just feel like I can fly over, so I just do it. It was all based on intuition. The racing god's intuition is never wrong, okay? I've already done similar things in the racing god's training ground, okay? Of course, Qin Guang knew how much shock his crazy action would cause to the others, but he didn't care at all. He just desperately leaned his body back, and relied on the change in his own weight to try to adjust the angle of the car in midair. Although the other side of the bend was the downhill section he needed, the angle was not as steep as the 30 degrees when he took off. He tried to reduce the landing angle as much as possible. It was close to the track itself, so that the car would receive the least amount of damage when it landed, and it would obtain the greatest speed. Bang! At this moment, there was a loud noise coming from the car window, and there was suddenly a pool of blood. F***ck. What the hell? I think I bumped into something. Qin Guang was so scared that he peed his pants. He turned his head and vaguely saw a white shadow about the size of 2 palms flash diagonally behind him, and it went straight down the cliff. Did I just kill a bird? White? Pigeons. Qin Guang didn't have the time to care about the unlucky pigeon. He quickly turned around and placed the tip of his foot on the gas pedal, focusing all his attention on the road ahead. He did not notice that when the unlucky pigeon was knocked into the sky, the heavenly holy grail that was fixed in the cup holder emitted a faint blood-red light, but it disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Thankfully, it was only a pigeon and not a cow. Otherwise, it would have fallen. That's not right. Cows can't fly to the sky. I'm not bragging. Just as Qin Guang was thinking about this, the car finally crossed the fence on the opposite track, and the front of the car was slanted towards the road. Thankfully, Qin Guang's car did not twist in mid-air due to the incline of the road. The front and front wheels touched the ground at almost the same time. Although there was a series of sparks on the ground, the rear wheels landed steadily, and the rear of the car quickly swung towards the mountain wall. The entire car quickly twisted and moved horizontally towards the mountain wall. The right wheel was completely separated from the road by the rebound force. At the same time, the moment the car landed, Chen Guang suddenly hit the gas pedal, and his entire body shifted to the right. The rear wheels spun desperately, bringing up billowing smoke and dust. Just as the car was about to cross the drainage ditch and crash into the mountain wall, the power provided by the rear wheels finally pushed the car forward fiercely. A smooth landing. Continue to sprint. Chen Guang's crazy move not only completely overtook the BMW M4 and the Subaru Winged Leopard WRXT, but also fiercely closed the distance between him and the McLaren P1 in front of him. In an instant, he pounced directly behind the McLaren P1, intending to continue overtaking it at this bend. 3.5 minutes later, the GTR once again disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind everyone who was unable to calm down for a long time. Luffy's mouth was wide open, and he still hadn't closed it. Ah Jia, on the other hand, sat on the ground, his face full of confusion. The bunch of top racers also didn't say a word. They had been in the underground racing world for many years, but they had never seen such a crazy move. The giant screen had already displayed his final result for the day, an average speed of 155.97. At the border of light and shadow, the matte black GTR shone like the sun. In Luffy's mind, she vaguely remembered what Wang Qing had said when he had called to inform her. There were 10 top racers, but he was indeed the only god of racing. He never lied. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Chen Guang calling, much faster than the previous 3 days. Luffy thought to herself that he might also be unable to hide his excitement and wanted to share the joy of his success with her. When the call connected, Luffy was slightly choked up. Chen Guang, you did 150 today, don't say that. The sheet metal of this car isn't expensive, right? I just stopped by the side of the road to take a look. The front of the car is a bit badly damaged, and the anti-collision beam is deformed. Damn! Wang Qing's car is so expensive. Don't tell me it'll cost hundreds of thousands to repair. Quick, help me ask Jia how much it'll cost. The car Wang Qing lent me was damaged, so I'll have to pay for it. You idiot. The point you're focusing on is too strange. Luffy turned to look at Jia, whose face was full of anticipation. Sister Luffy, what did Brother Racing God say? He must be very excited right now, right? Luffy shook her head numbly. He asked you how much it'll cost to repair the front of the car and the anti-collision beam. Jia was stunned. Ha! Just like Lu Fei, Jia also spent a lot of effort to recover from this blow that was like a club to the head. In the end, Jia comforted himself. Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. Perhaps Brother Racing God's uniqueness was reflected in this seemingly cute trait. That's right. That must be it. After yesterday's painful lesson, this time, Chen Guang didn't run away on the spot. Instead, he planned to follow the Chevrolet back to the track halfway up the mountain. Jia left first. Just now, Chen Guang had driven the car to the training track for a moment. Tomorrow was the race to protect the car, and Jia had an important task. Not only did he have to repair the damage, but he also had to check the condition of the car as soon as possible. Although Chen Guang's precise control had reduced the impact and the car landed to the minimum after flying such a long distance, he couldn't eliminate the possibility of the car being damaged during the collision. He had to check it to make sure nothing went wrong. Chapter 255. Unlike the previous few days, today, after Chen Guang finished his race, he went straight to the stage of locking the car and taking the money. At the same time, he had to determine the method of tomorrow's car protection battle. There had never been a car race like today, where there were 6 car kings and a car king's son in the 4th round. Ryoichi Takahashi and Waden Junyao had long been determined to participate in the first round of the car protection battle, but it was not clear how the 5 people who arrived later would participate. At present, in addition to Ryoichi Takahashi and Waden Junyao, there were 2 other ordinary drivers who had signed up for the first round of the car protection battle. But it was obvious that there were 7 Car King level players, and there were not enough seats. The 2 people who had signed up before were basically out of the picture. The world's top 10 Car Kings were generally about the same level. There were 3 people who were recognized as slightly better than the others. One was the new top Car King, Tommy Diesel. When he won the championship in Hong Kong 4 years ago, he had defeated Ferdinand, the Car King of the Rising Sun City, and Felix, the Diamond Car King of Africa. The other was the Eternal Car King of New York, Schroeder. So far, he had never tasted defeat, but he had not fought with Diesel, so it was hard to say who was stronger and who was weaker. The last person was somewhat similar to Chen Guang, who had been wearing a V-shaped special agent mask these days. He was also a player who always hid behind a mask. 6 years ago, he won the championship in Los Angeles with an unstoppable momentum and participated in 3 consecutive car protection battles in the same year. Not only did he suppress several talented newcomers who emerged this year, but he also defeated the Rainforest Car King, Speed, the Japanese Car King, Ryoichi Takahashi, and another Ice Car King. It was not a simple defeat, but a big gap. Unlike Chen Guang's V-shaped special agent mask, the man was wearing a very typical Chinese dragon mask, so some people speculated that he was Chinese, but it could not be confirmed. So far, only Diesel had come, and it was said that Schroeder was on the way. The last dragon-patterned Car King's whereabouts were unknown. Diesel discussed with the crowd and quickly came up with a decision. There were currently 4 places in the first round of the car protection battle. In addition to Ryoichi Takahashi and Waden Junyao, it was confirmed that Ferdinand and Frant would participate for the time being. Diesel, Spade, and Felix were prepared to participate in the second round of battle, which might or might not happen. If this Matt GTR couldn't even pass the first round, then it would be impossible for him to defeat Diesel. Hence, with Diesel's identity, it was reasonable for him to stay until the second round. As for the others, their method of deciding the order was simple as well. They just had to draw cards to see who had the most cards. The winner would go first, and the loser would wait for the second round. After all, it was rare for them to move, and seeing that everyone had arrived in such an orderly manner, it was very likely that there wouldn't be a second round after the first round. Naturally, they didn't want to come here for nothing. If Chen Guang, who was rushing back, knew that these Car Kings were actually worried about not having a second round, he would probably just chuckle and say that they were too naive. Liu Fei got into the car and drove to the parking lot of the finish line. Chen Guang returned to the finish line from the other end. As usual, Chen Guang sat in the off-road vehicle, while Liu Fei chose a car and collected money not far away. In other people's eyes, this was an exceptionally noble and lifelike car race, but for Chen Guang, it was only the prize money and the car that was locked in the garage. When Chen Guang and Liu Fei had met just now, they had decided that since there weren't any particularly valuable high-end cars in the last 4 places, they might as well lock up the brand new Renault Alpine that Renault had sent to show off. The reason was very simple. This car hadn't been released yet, and if it was on the market, it would have a serious negative impact on the company's upcoming promotion and release of their new car. In addition to the loss of reputation, many innovative technologies that they didn't want to be exposed in advance would also be leaked. Renault definitely wouldn't be willing. That was exactly what Chen Guang wanted to take advantage of. Since they had sent their car to participate in this race, no matter what company or how rich they were, they had to abide by the rules of the race. Therefore, they would first lock up their new car. Next, they would have to wait for them to come knocking on their door and redeem the car with money that was far higher than its actual value. No. You can't lock this car. In the crowd, a tall, blonde Frenchman shouted angrily, waving his hands as if trying to raise his momentum. Another blonde, a blue-eyed driver in a racing suit stood behind this man with an awkward expression, his eyes flashing. He felt a little embarrassed. He was the best driver in France, and he had just won the World Rally Championship in the first half of the year. He had been invited by Renault to participate in the underground racing, and he had originally planned to win in one fell swoop. He didn't expect the rules of the underground racing to be so cruel, the competition to be so fierce, and the opponents to be so strong that it was beyond comprehension. He won the first 3 rounds very easily, but he didn't expect to lose in the last round, and in such a tragic way. He didn't even get into the top 4, so much so that his car had to be locked up. For a conceited racer, this was simply trampling on his self-confidence and self-esteem. He had no face left. But this was still not the most embarrassing thing for him. Before coming here, he knew the cruel rules of the car race. He himself didn't care about it. He felt that since he had chosen to participate in the race, of course, he had to accept the rules, or else he shouldn't have come. Even if it was just to protect his reputation, he shouldn't try to act shamelessly after losing. But the manager of Renault didn't think so. He felt that this new car contained too much of the company's new technology, so he was determined not to let the car be locked up. This manager was a senior executive of a dignified multinational company, so he decided to act shamelessly in front of everyone. Luffy only held his hand and watched coldly as the Frenchman jumped up and down, not saying a word. No one could act shamelessly in a car race, whether you were a British prince or the prince of an Arab sheik. It was all the same. There was no need for Luffy to say any more nonsense. The organizer of the car race would naturally deal with this matter. Mr. Basile, I'm sorry, we can't satisfy your request. Since the winner has already designated your car, then you must hand over the key. This is the rule of our car race. If you want to violate our rules, then not only will you be going against my Hong Kong car race, but even Count LaFontaine, who presides over the Paris car race, will become your company's enemy. You have to understand the seriousness of this matter. A middle-aged Chinese man stood in front of the angry Frenchman and spoke calmly. This man was able to organize a race of such a scale, and was also able to subdue the rebellious underground drivers. Needless to say, his status was extraordinary, and his bearing was even more extraordinary. Chapter 256. The Frenchman's expression suddenly froze. He was a manager who had worked his way up from the technical level. He wasn't very familiar with the rules of the car racing competition, but he knew that the Chinese man in front of him wasn't joking. He wanted to bow his head, but as the highest person in charge of the company, he really didn't want to take on such a heavy responsibility. Chen Guang saw that the situation was getting out of the car, so he decided to get out of the car and see what was going on. Uncle Cheng had specifically sent 6 bodyguards to protect him, so he didn't have to worry about anyone pulling off his mask. Well, Chen Guang didn't want to admit it. In fact, his purpose of getting out of the car was very simple. He wanted to stir up trouble and make more money. No. Absolutely not. Basile couldn't think of any other way, so he simply grabbed the key from the driver's hand, then sat in the car and locked the window. He was completely acting like a rascal. He couldn't be blamed for doing this. In order to configure a top sports car that could compete in the underground racing world, the company had invested too much key technology into this car. It was even more than the new car they were going to release. Once this prototype fell into someone else's hands, the technical improvement ideas of the company for the next 2 years would be exposed. He was also the one who pushed for this matter. He was a proud technician, and he was too eager to find a suitable opportunity to prove his results. He didn't expect to fail miserably in such an easy task. Obviously, even if he were to act shamelessly, they wouldn't let him go so easily. The middle-aged Chinese man gave a look, and someone went up with a hammer, ready to knock on the window and drag the rascal out. Basile had no choice but to roll down the window and yell, "Isn't there a second stage of your car racing competition? If he didn't win the second stage, then this car isn't his, right?" The middle-aged Chinese man smiled and nodded. "That's right. So, Mr. Basile, you don't have to be so excited. We're just temporarily locking the car up. If he loses any of the next 3 races, you can still take the car away." Basile couldn't help but be tempted when he heard that. However, he looked at Diesel and the others not far away, and he couldn't make up his mind. At this moment, Chen Guang walked over. Over the past few days, his V-shaped special agent team mask had been firmly remembered by everyone. Even if Chen Guang didn't say anything, everyone's eyes gradually shifted to him. Finally, they saw this man, many people thought in their hearts. With a height of 1.8 meters, Chen Guang didn't look tall in the crowd, but in the eyes of others, this masked man was growing taller and taller. Even though he did not speak, his aura gradually enveloped the entire area. Even the person in charge of the Hong Kong car gambling competition, who had been calm from beginning to end, could not help but raise his eyebrows and look at Chen Guang with great interest. No one knew what Chen Guang was thinking at this time. "Damn it, I just came here to act cool on a whim. Why the hell are all of you looking at me like that?" No one would have thought that under Chen Guang's cold expression, he was ridiculing them in his heart. "Damn it, these people's eyes are so scary, it's like they want to eat me. Should I go back into the car?" No. It wasn't easy to come up with an idea to make a lot of money. There won't be another chance like this. Hang in there. Chen Guang. You must hang in there. You are the second officer of the N Royal whose hands are stained with blood. You are the invincible car god. Don't be afraid. I'm not kidding, I've rarely been in an environment like this. Although it's nice to see you guys look at me with admiration, there are too many people looking at me. It's a bit stressful. Wait, what the hell is this unmanned helicopter flying above my head? Chen Guang glanced at it out of the corner of his eye, and his heart was racing. The giant screen was actually a close-up of his face taken by the unmanned helicopter's camera. Forget it, I'll just smile at this time. Therefore, the corner of Chen Guang's mouth slightly curled up. With a faint smile, he walked to the driver's door of the Renault Alpine and slightly lowered his head to look at Basile. Basile also turned his head to look at Chen Guang standing outside. His heart gradually began to beat faster. He didn't want to admit that he was weak, but he felt a terrifying pressure from the masked man. This is the man who, in 4 days, turned the world's underground racing world upside down. If he could really win this time, then there was no doubt that he would be the best car racing man in the world. This was a god who was walking step by step to the top. Suddenly, Chen Guang extended 2 fingers and said in his pure medieval English accent, "I'll give you 2 choices. 1, give me €1,000,000 now, and I won't lock the car today. You can drive it away immediately. 2, when I become the car king, you'll have to give me €2,000,000 to take this car away. You decide." After saying that, Chen Guang turned around without another word and went straight back to the off-road vehicle. When he finally sat down, he gently patted his chest and softly said to himself, "Damn, fortunately, I have strong mental fortitude." I almost couldn't speak. The driver sitting in front rolled his eyes. "My brother, you call that strong mental fortitude?" Chen Guang left decisively, but he didn't realize how arrogant his words were to Basile. The first choice was fine, but he actually proposed the second choice in public, and in the presence of so many car kings. This was clearly telling everyone that he didn't care about these world-famous car kings at all. The veins on Diesel's bald head bulged. Wu Panjuanyao's coquettish face suddenly burst into a smile, looking somewhat sinister. Takahashi Ryoichi snorted coldly. But Fran had already shouted, "Arrogant guy. Tomorrow, I'll use my 1200 horsepower monster to make you understand. You're just a condescending bastard." The other car kings didn't react much better, but they weren't as impulsive as this young man Frant. Chen Guang heard Frant's clamor from afar. He stared blankly for a moment before reacting. "Damn, I'm not talking to you, why are you so angry?" "No. Didn't I seem a bit too arrogant just now?" "Forget it, I've already said it, I don't care anymore." After waiting for a while, Lu Fei and Uncle Qing finally got back in the car. "The French looked down on you, he chose you for the second condition. You're really treacherous. The normal landing price of Alpine in China is no more than 2 million RMB, but because of you, it's become 2 million euros. Chen Guang grinned, serves them right. Wanting to promote mass-produced cars in the underground racing scene was a stupid decision. I just let them pay a little tuition fee. For a multinational company like them, 2 million euros is nothing more than the cost of finding a spokesperson. It's not unbearable. It's better than me selling the car to their competitors, right? Unfortunately, he's not very smart. If it were me, I'd directly choose 1 million euros and drive away now. Lu Fei poked Chen Guang's head, others think you might lose, so they bet. Chen Guang laughed, I like gamblers. Chapter 257. Just as Chen Guang and the others were about to leave, an image suddenly appeared on the giant screen. In the image, another heavy truck was slowly driving into the parking lot of the starting point. Luffy glanced at it and exclaimed, "The German is here. Didn't they say he was rock climbing? Why is he here?" "German? Who?" "Schroeder. A flawless racing machine." Leaning back, Chen Guang stretched his waist and asked, "Really? That's getting interesting." Just as he finished speaking, another heavy truck drove over. Luffy suddenly straightened up from the back seat. The parking lot outside was even noisier. "Who is this?" Chen Guang's interest was finally piqued. "The Dragon King of Cars. I think he's also from China. Like you, he likes to wear a mask and never shows his face to others. Before you, he was considered the racer closest to God. Of the top 10 racers in the world, only the Eskimo didn't come. See, this is what you get for running like crazy on the first day. These people are crazy." Luffy's emotions were a little out of control. The appearance of these two people was too unexpected. The people outside also became restless. Although he didn't know much about the king of cars in the underground racing world, Chen Guang's fighting spirit was gradually aroused. Was he finally going to face the adored opponents of the world? Chen Guang turned his head to look at the two heavy trucks on the giant screen. His eyes flashed fiercely. "I have a new idea. It's a crazy idea." Luffy heard the fierceness in his words. She turned to look at him. "What do you want to do?" "Tomorrow, we'll settle 3 battles to protect the carriage. Help me contact the organizing committee. As long as they agree, I'll solve all of them in one day." "What? Are you crazy?" Luffy was shocked. "You'll collapse from exhaustion if you run 3 races in a row." "They won't agree either." Chen Guang shook his head. "I won't collapse. You've never seen me at my limit. As he said this, Chen Guang recalled the scene when he drove the Alto to 400 kilometers per hour in the racing god's training ground. Damn it, this is really unbearable to look back on. If I lose control even a little bit, I won't even have the chance to turn into a meat patty. Instead, I'll be turned into minced meat, the kind that can be used to cook dumplings. Compared to the racing god training ground, the underground racing outside was too gentle. What are you trying to do? Seeing how serious he was, Lu Fei began to seriously consider his request. Since all the top racecar kings are here, the Ice Snow Racecar King doesn't seem to be very powerful. Then let the 9 of them attack together. I was the last to start the race. All 10 cars were racing at the same time. I gave all of them 3 chances. Within these 3 chances, no matter who stole my first place, I would lose the title of Racing King. But if I win, I want to take away all their cars. Impossible. The Racing Kings also have their own pride. They won't agree to such a request. This is an insult to them. Uncle Cheng, please help me contact a local racecar king in Xiangjiang. I will make a trip there now, and then they will definitely agree to my request. If they don't agree, I will choose to withdraw from the race. They will never have the chance to challenge me. If they are really crazy about racing, they won't refuse me. Until Chen Guang got into Yuan's car, Lu Fei didn't understand where Chen Guang got this crazy confidence. Lu Fei didn't understand Chen Guang's realm at all. In fact, before he made this crazy decision, Chen Guang didn't understand it either. He just wanted to maximize his own benefits. Since there was only one chance in the racing competition, if he wanted to do it, he would make it big, the bigger the better. Later on, others would know that he was just giving away money, so naturally, no one would want to gamble with him. Therefore, once he made the decision, Chen Guang understood the reason behind it. A mature racecar king was bound to experience many accidents. The racing field was ever-changing. Normally speaking, there was no such thing as an invincible general. It was a pity that an ordinary racecar king could make many mistakes in his life, and encounter many accidents that weren't fatal. But all it would take was one truly tragic collision, and the racecar king would leave this world forever. Different from others, Chen Guang had died 95 times on the road to becoming the racing god, and there were countless other non-fatal collisions. The experience he had was more than 10 times, or 95 times, that of others. Since he had decided to stand on this stage and thoroughly show his hard-won skills to the world, if he didn't bring out his true limits, he would be letting down the audience who were infatuated with racing, and even more so, letting down the 95 times he had died in the racing god training field. He was afraid that he wouldn't have such an opportunity to race to his heart's content in the future, so he might as well let this rare opportunity shine to the extreme. He wouldn't leave any regrets for himself, nor would he leave any regrets for others. This was respect for others, and respect for himself. He had been too arrogant just now, and since he had already angered the other racecar kings, he might as well add fuel to the fire and push this race to the top. From now on, he would truly stand at the pinnacle of the world's racing industry. Therefore, he used Yuan's Volkswagen to run an average speed of 163.78. Everyone was confused. Today's race had clearly ended, and his car had already been sent away. Why was he using someone else's car to break the record of 155.97, which had been thought to be unsurpassable? Was this guy trying to make all racing enthusiasts lose the courage to continue racing? The blood-red figure of 163.78 on the giant screen fiercely shocked everyone's eyes. The 9 racecar kings weren't much better off than the others. They all stared at the giant screen dumbfoundedly. Within a day, he had switched to another car and broken another record. To him, this dangerous winding mountain road seemed to have become a straight line. What was his purpose in doing this? Was he trying to make everyone give up on protecting their cars? It was undeniable that people like Frank and Ferdinand were in despair when they saw this number. Diesel smiled bitterly and said to the others, "It seems like we shouldn't have come here." There was silence. Even the Dragon King and Schroeder, who had just gathered, were speechless. Unwillingness surged in the hearts of the 9 race cars. They had been racecar kings for too long, and no one had ever looked down on them like this. Their reputations weren't based on bragging. They were all achieved bit by stepping on the blood and tears of countless people in the bitter battles where life and death hung by a thread. No one could deny that they were powerful. But now, they felt incomparable disappointment and fear, perhaps mixed with a trace of unavoidable anger. But what use was that? Chapter 258. Today, this man had completely belittled everyone with his words. Then he turned around and set a track record that seemed impossible to surpass. He was so unscrupulous. And he was using a car that he had just picked up, not the GTR that he had been using for the past few days. This was downright contempt, but no one present dared to say that they could get close to that terrifying record. It was as if they didn't live in the same world. If he wasn't driving someone else's car, these car kings would even think that he was using technology from the future 100 years later. Then, Chen Guang's face with the V special agent mask appeared on the giant screen. He had just snatched the seat of the stunned Mr. X. "Hello, friends. I'm a GTR racer. You can call me Mr. V. Now, I have a great idea to share with you." The V special agent mask on the giant screen had a strange smile as he spoke slowly. Everyone held their breath and looked at the giant screen, waiting to hear what he had to say. "Are you going to destroy our last bit of dignity? Tomorrow will be my last day in the racing competition. I know that 8 of the only 10 car kings on Earth are here, and one of them is the son of a car king. But that's not important. I'm tired of these pointless challenges. I just want to end this boring race as soon as possible." Chen Guang's voice was extremely cold, arrogant, and annoyed. "I really have to thank this arrogant, cool mask. My acting skills are terrible, but I have a mask." Chen Guang thought this in his heart, but he continued, "So, I have a good idea to share with you. Tomorrow, I plan to race with the 9 of you. There will be 9 cars competing at the same time, and I'll start in the last row. I'll give you 3 chances to beat me. If I don't win in any of them, I'll be considered a complete failure. If I win 3 times in a row, then I want all of your cars. You can choose not to accept it. Then, I'll withdraw from the race. This is your last chance to challenge me. You have 30 seconds to consider my request." Chen Guang felt that his lines were excellent, but he was immediately worried. What if this group of people chickened out? Hence, he immediately coughed lightly and added, "If I really have to retire from the race with regret, I'll use the GTR to leave an average speed record of more than 170 km per hour. If you're interested, you can slowly try it. If there is a day in the future when someone can surpass 170, perhaps I will appear in front of you again." After saying that, he began to pray in his heart. "I'm King cocky. If you guys can still back down, I'll stew my own tongue and eat it." As expected, anger quickly overwhelmed despair and fear in the hearts of Schroeder and the others. Although everyone was in despair, they had never competed before. They would never admit defeat. He wants everyone's car. Was that important? None of the people who came here cared about money. Even if you really are a god, we will use our actions to let you hear the roar of mortals. We are definitely not the king of cheap cars. At the same time, just as Chen Guang expected, this group of people could become the king of cars because they were the world's most fanatical racing enthusiasts. After waiting for so many years, a godlike opponent had finally appeared. If they couldn't challenge him, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. We accept your conditions. Tomorrow. Fight to the death. In the end, Diesel was chosen as the representative. He stood at the front and roared with his loud voice. More than 60,000 fans roared in excitement and madness in unison on the huge half-mountain racetrack. In the decades since the underground racing was born, there had never been a race that was as worthy of everyone's anticipation as tomorrow. Regardless of whether this crazy Mr. V could create the miracle that he claimed to be tomorrow, he would definitely go down in history. Thousands of kilometers away, Xue Jingxi and Lin Jingwei, who had been waiting in front of the computer screen, looked at each other. They had never seen Chen Guang like this, but he was so handsome that it made their hearts beat wildly. Seeing that Chen Guang had finally returned to his car, Lin Jingwei, as the representative chosen by everyone, finally made a call. Chen Guang was just about to brag to Lu Fei when he heard his phone ring. He looked down and saw that it was Lin Jingwei calling. He was extremely puzzled. Brother Guang. You're so King awesome. I really regret dragging Gaoyao along to watch the live broadcast. You're going against the heavens. We've been watching the live broadcast of the mountain track. We're all watching you race. The first sentence that Lin Jingwei said made Chen Guanglei burn on the outside and tender on the inside. Damn it, my pretentious appearance was seen by this group of grandsons. F***CK. I'll definitely be laughed at when I go back, right? No. From his tone, it didn't seem like it. On the other side, Sun Xiaoxuan had already grabbed the phone and said loudly, Chen Guang, don't be like this. It's very dangerous. How can you compare yourself to others like this? I'm sorry, I couldn't help but tell Lin Jingwei. I didn't know he could get a live broadcast signal. Then the phone was snatched away by Xiong Er. Brother Guang, no matter what, you'll always be my boss. Ban Yangzi's voice came again. I'm King in love with you, Brother Guang. Then it was Gaoya. I'm in love with you too. On the other side, Lin Jingwei's screams could be heard. No. Then it was Xue Jingxi. No matter what, you must be safe. I'm in love with you too. Chen Guang, I want to have your babies. Sun Xiaoxuan actually threw caution to the wind, but she sounded like she was joking. Perhaps she really wanted to take advantage of this strange time to say something abnormal. I want to have your babies too. Gaoya was provoking Lin Jingwei again. Chen Guang couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sure enough, the way he acted was too cool just now. The people on the other side were already abnormal. When I go back, I must watch the video. That way, I can be awakened by my own handsomeness every day. He, don't be infatuated with me. I'm a living legend. Let me tell you, you don't know how fast my heart was beating when I was talking just now. I was so nervous. Luckily, I was wearing a mask. Otherwise, you could all see that my face was completely pale. Don't be fooled by my domineering and handsome appearance. I'm actually panicking inside. It's just like when I was in primary school on hosted Children's Day. My heart would pound when I thought of tens of thousands of people listening to me. Chen Guang patted his chest as he spoke with lingering fear. He could finally relax. If he didn't find the right opportunity to say these words, he really wouldn't be able to calm down. The people on the other side of the phone, Lu Fei and Uncle Qing in the car, and the driver who was looking at Chen Guang with a face full of admiration, were all stunned. This grandson style had changed again. Chapter 259. It was late at night. In her pajamas, Lu Fei paced back and forth anxiously in the living room of the suite. She had been back to the hotel for about 2 hours, and Chen Guang had already closed the door and gone to bed an hour ago. Lu Fei had been struggling until now. She had plucked up the courage to knock on Chen Guang's door several times, but she eventually put her hand down. Although Chen Guang was very confident in himself, Lu Fei still couldn't calm down at the thought of him participating in such a crazy race the next day. If he really succeeded, he would really become a god from then on. But if he failed, well, failure in the ordinary sense was not unacceptable. But Lu Fei was afraid that he would die in the race the next day. So Lu Fei told herself that no matter what, shouldn't she at least leave one more memory with him today? Or perhaps it could be said to be a real encouragement to him. But in the end, after pacing around for nearly half an hour, Lu Fei returned to her room. It wasn't that she had changed her mind, but she knew that the race the next day was too important. Since Chen Guang hadn't brought it up himself, perhaps it was because a man's essence energy would affect his racing condition. She couldn't seduce him after such a time. If she really did it with him the whole night, wouldn't it be a huge sin for him to compete with dark circles under his eyes the next day? It seems like it's not just my first time. He also said that he was an old virgin. If he got greedy, he would definitely ask for it again and again, right? At least that was what was written in the books. So Lu Fei decided that she had to believe in him. Since she chose to believe in his success, she would leave the most precious reward for his triumphant return. Unfortunately, Lu Fei didn't know that Chen Guang was currently facing the computer, looking at the treasures he had just collected and chuckling. An action movie to his heart's content, 4 layers of super absorbent toilet paper, a beautiful trash can, and a manly 3-piece suit. Nothing could be missing. He had no choice. He had already transferred 4 million to Old Man. The 4-fold recovery soup was waiting for him in the 5 capitals. Old Man Guang was terrified at the thought of that thing. If something really happened to it, he would definitely have a nosebleed as he walked, right? Safety first. Allow the old man to masturbate first. Around 6:00 in the afternoon, the track was already packed with people. Every parking lot's capacity had reached its limit. Not only could they not park their cars, but even people could barely find a place to stand. Nearly 120,000 people crowded into each parking lot. Because of this special competition, too many people had set off overnight and crossed the ocean to get here. At that moment, Chen Guang wasn't at the mid-mountain racetrack. Instead, he was at Jia's modification factory. After Chen Guang had decided on such a crazy match yesterday, Jia hadn't slept a wink until now. He felt that his responsibility was too great, and it was about to exceed the limits of what his heart could bear. At this time, Chen Guang was pointing at the hood and making another request, which made him even more reluctant to agree. Brother Racing God, this isn't too good, right? These 2 turbochargers were originally prepared for the straight-line acceleration race. They couldn't be used in the bends. It's very easy to get into trouble. Jia struggled to speak. Chen Guang shook his head. That guy called Farant said his car has 1,200 horsepower. Although I don't know how much horsepower the other car kings have, and it doesn't mean that the more horsepower a car has, the better the car's performance is. But since I've already boasted, I have to win cleanly. So, turn on these 2 turbochargers for me. I want 1,000 horsepower. Jia still refused to agree. Chen Guang grinned. I know you're worried about me, but you're worrying too much. The reason I'm making this request is because I know I can definitely control it. Although I'm crazy, I'm not reckless. Lu Fei stood on the side. In fact, she wanted to persuade Chen Guang like Jia, but she knew that since Chen Guang had already made up his mind, nothing she said would work. In the end, Ajia proposed a compromise, which was to add an extra switch in the car. Chen Guang could decide whether to turn on the two turbochargers or not. Under the premise of ensuring performance stability, Chen Guang agreed to Ajia's proposal. When it was 7:30, Chen Guang and the others finally set off for the mountain track. If it weren't for Chen Guang's iconic matte GTR opening the way, the people in front of them blocking the mountainside would have made way when they saw them coming. Almost none of them would have been able to get to the starting point parking lot before 8 o'clock. Along the way, Lu Fei kept turning her head to look at Chen Guang from time to time. "Why do you always look at me like I want to say something? Just say what you want to say." Chen Guang took the initiative to speak. Lu Fei shook her head fiercely. "No, nothing." She thought to herself, "How could I say something like that? I can't tell you before the race starts that if you win today, I'll sleep with you. Right, please help me book a ticket back to Wujing tonight." Can I book it now?" Chen Guang suddenly said. Lu Fei was stunned. "Huh? You're leaving tonight?" Chen Guang took a deep breath. "Yeah, I've been away from Wujing for a few days. My mom's going to have surgery the day after tomorrow, so it's good to go back early to accompany her. I'm just worried that all the cars in today's live auction won't be sold out. Excluding the Renault car, there are still 12 other cars. From your tone, it sounds like you're already treating other people's cars as if they're already yours." Even though she had seen this guy's confidence in racing, Lu Fei was still intoxicated by his nonchalant attitude, treating other people purely as cash machines. Chen Guang nodded heavily. "That's right. From the moment they agreed to my request, their cars were no longer theirs." "Right, where's the car's CD? Can I play music through Bluetooth? I plan to play some exciting songs for myself during the race later." "Play music." Lu Fei helped him connect his phone to the Bluetooth and looked at him strangely. Chen Guang nodded. "Yeah, when I was learning to drive, there was always music to accompany me. I listened to some songs to refresh myself, and it could be considered as getting back to the feeling I had when I was learning to drive." He didn't finish his sentence. There was music in the Racing God training ground, but it was all annoying 8-bit game soundtrack. But what he said was true. To bring out the best, of course, he had to completely restore the environment at that time. When the team finally drove slowly into the parking lot, there was almost no space in the parking lot of more than 40,000 people. Fortunately, the race organizers had reserved a corner of the parking lot for them, otherwise Lu Fei and the others wouldn't even have a place to park their cars. Completely different from the previous days, there was no sign of chaos on the mountain track today. On the contrary, it was filled with an extremely solemn atmosphere. Even if someone spoke, they tried to keep their voice down. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.